Hey there, everyone. Or whoever. It looks like I'm the only one here again to begin the show. Paulo's still at work, so he's going to be here in an hour. And Wilson should be showing up too. I don't know who else is going to be showing up. We'll have to see. Scott still isn't around, so don't think he'll be showing up. But I figured I'd come on myself and talk to you people, see what was going on, because I got 14 comics this week, which is a whole lot of comics for me. I'm the only asshole here now that all those other assholes are gone. It's just you and me. I got 14 comics this week because last week my my shop didn't get its indies in. I got all of even though last week when I was at the shop, I picked a few things up off the shelf. All my comics from last week and this week came in, which was it's a lot of comics in 1 week. 14 of them. I think it was $52 worth of comics. For some reason, $25 a week seems fine, but $50 in a week is like, holy cow, that's a freaking lot of comics. A lot of money for a comics. But got a whole bunch of stuff. Including one I didn't read because it's been read already. Todd McFarlane put out a Spawn #1 reprint with a sketch cover on it. And I was just decided, hey, why not? I don't think I don't know if I've ever had a Spawn sketch cover. I haven't bought a sketch cover in a while. But occasionally I'd like to draw on them. It's actually much more difficult to draw on a sketch cover than an actual piece of paper. I've got this somewhere. So I haven't done one in so long. I don't know where it is. I've got this like 11 by 14 piece of paper with 4 big photo corners in that I like slip this onto that piece of paper so I can move it around and not mess up the sketch cover so much. But I don't think I've read Spawn #1 in a long time. This didn't really make me want to read it either. Oh, there's a nice sideways pin-up of Spawn. I never bought. Did I buy Spawn #1 the first time around? I don't think I did. I think the first issue of Spawn I bought was Spawn number. Oh, there's Wilson.
Hello.
Good evening, Wilson. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm just talking about Spawn #1 sketch cover.
What?
They just Todd McFarlane just put out a reprint of Spawn #1 with blank sketch cover variation. So I got one. I haven't drawn on a sketch cover in ages.
It's been a while. I have quite a few of them lying around here somewhere, but I have not put pen to paper in a while.
Well, I've put pen to paper plenty, but just not on a comic book sketch cover.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find it easy to draw on comic book sketch covers either.
It's not. It's the paper. It's a combination of a few things. Since I did a lot of sketch cards over the years.
Right.
I've done work for Topps, Upper Deck, Cryptozoic. Every one of them, their paper is always different from project to project, so you never know what you're going to get. So I have found that Marvel's covers are all right.
Mm-hmm.
DC covers are not. Because there was, and again, it's not that sketch covers are new. I think every time they pick whatever they pick from the printers, there's a mistake always along the line. I've seen covers where the reason why you can't draw on them is because they put a coating on it. Like one of the glossy coatings or something that's like you should have maybe not printed that cover that way. Someone left a template and just reused it and didn't check off that one box that we always miss, I would say.
Yeah. So what type of paper is the sketch cover? I never bought one. I guess they're all different depending on cardstock. Yeah, they try to get some sort of drawing paper on it. Like most of the sketch covers I've drawn on are okay.
Yeah.
Um, they're not. I mean, it's not great, but it's good enough to do a drawing on. I mean, I've done some like marker drawings on some too, and they've been okay. But I draw with marker on Bristol a lot, so I'm
Okay.
used to that because
Mm.
Bristol isn't Bristol is the Bristol board is the paper that comic book art is drawn on. It's a thick drawing paper.
It's by
Um,
Strathmore. It's usually 300. I think it's 300 pound.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's not 300 pound. It's
It's
just 300 is the number.
it's the numbering system.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
this the yellow covered Strathmore
Mhm.
because they're usually most people use Strathmore 300 or Strathmore 400. Strathmore 400 is a little smoother. Well, what it is it all depends on like how many times they press it, kind of.
Right.
And so, though it's the same weight, Strathmore 400 is actually a tiny bit thinner, but can take more but it's a more durable paper. It can take more erasing and such things and white out.
Mhm.
But I ink over blue line all the time. It's like I never erase a lot over stuff I'm inking on. So the 300 is good enough for me.
Right.
So that's almost what I always use, and it's slightly cheaper.
Mhm.
But I've known like people like I think Walter Simonson always uses the 400. He likes the 400. And there are artists who have a preference, but for me, like 400 has got the brown paper cover, and 300 has the yellow paper cover. And it's like you can find 300 everywhere too. You can find 300 at like Michael's and places like that. The 400 you can't. You have like 400 you can usually only find in art stores. Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Now,
I actually have when I was doing I did a bunch of these. They're still on my shelf somewhere, like 5, 6 years ago. What I ended up doing was taking a piece of matter of fact, it might be. I'm not sure if it's a piece of Bristol or an old piece of Marvel mechanical paper. I still have some of that lying around.
I do as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
They
have the.
they were getting rid of it all when we went digital and they were moving from 387 to 40th Street. So like, here, want some of this? I was like, okay, I'll take some home.
Yeah, I still have those. I still have the short papers.
I used up all of my scrap Bristol.
I have some still left.
I
I
ran
have
out of
at
that in
least
like
that much still
2011 or
left.
2012.
Mhm.
I used to use it all the time. But
Yeah.
what I did, I take it's probably around 11 by 14, and I take this and I open it up halfway and I put two big, like 2-inch photo corners. Have you ever seen those photo corners?
Yes. Hmm.
And they're just like little triangles that are plastic that you can you slip the corner of photos in order to put a photo in a book. Well, I use those to keep my sketch cover in place. That way I can kind of spin the 11 by 14 without having to wreck the cover, because often like if I'm drawing on the front and back, I have to, it's impossible when you're trying to I like put it in those photo corners and everything's much better.
I've used the photo corners, as I mentioned before, for the sketch cards. Because what I
Ah,
would do is I would take, depending on the company, you were allowed to
right.
do puzzle cards, which meant you could put like 4 sketch cards together
Okay.
and then do the drawing on it, and it would break up, and then people would have to try to find them when they go out there, which they never really will, unfortunately. But what I would do is I'll take an image, or I took an image, and I would draw it once, figure out what is the composition that I want, and do about 10. So those 10 images are really 40 individual cards.
Right.
So what I would do is I would, using again that's kind of scrap paper, I would put the tabs, the plastic tabs on it, so I could
Uh-huh.
put the cards in it because I didn't like putting tape on the cards. Because the moment
Yeah.
you pull the tape up, it just
Right.
brings up the cards. That's the other
Yeah.
problem with the card stock that are used. You don't know what's going to happen when you use tools on them. So you could rip them easily or what have you. So I got into the habit of putting it into those tabs, and then I could draw all these cards out in a group, and then basically have that set done that way. And it was using those tabs. And again, it's basically a lot of times with artists, whatever's in the shop, you will use it. I
Right.
happen to have those tabs for, I think, scrapbooking
Yeah.
that my sister mom was into for a short while. So all these things were all over the place. And it's like,
Ah,
oh, I could use these for that,
yeah.
and that's what I did with that. So going from sketch cards to doing sketch covers were fairly easy. One of the art projects that I had promised myself to do, like every other artist does, I had gotten from eBay a stack of Silver Age comic books that come without a cover.
Right.
And I figured, oh, I'll just get some Bristol paper, fold it
Yep.
over, and make my own covers
I have done that.
on
Yeah.
that. I just got to the point where it's like, do I just redo the cover that already existed? Or do I do something new in my style? Or do I ape the art, and try to see how close can I get to the original? So it's like once you get to that point where it's like, oh, I got three options or more, and it's like, ooh, which one do I want to do first? And then you get stuck into that, what should I do?
One of the things I did a few years ago is I was looking through my shop once, my local comic shop, and found for just a couple of bucks. I think they were the 1970s EC Comics reprints. They've been reprinted so many times,
Right.
but I think these ones were from the 70s. They're pretty delicate paper. But I decided I was going to make my own new covers. But what I did was I found a panel I liked in the book, and I blew up that panel and made it and drew it into a cover. So there's another option for you. Find a panel you like in the book and make it into them and blow it up and make it into the cover. So I did that with a few of those EC ones. That was fun because I also got to ape some of those old EC guys' styles. That was nothing I'd ever done before.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea because I do know that a lot of the covers that I really enjoy in comics are usually from inside the book. It would be a
Yeah.
panel, not necessarily the exact panel, but something similar where it's like it's part of the story. And I always thought that was something great about comics is that you look at the cover. If the cover can tell you a little bit of the story, that's usually what grabs it, what makes me grab it.
There's one of them.
Oh,
Crime
nice. Okay.
suspense stories. Let's see, do I have another one here? This is one I think I just drew. That one wasn't a panel inside. The Haunt of Fear.
Okay.
I was just drawing the Crypt Keeper. Let's see, this was a panel inside. Two-Fisted Tales. That's a Jack Davis panel.
Nice.
So I had fun doing those. Oh, here's one. Here's another one. I forget who's... all of a sudden his name flies out of my head, whose panel that is. So that's what I did. I took one of those panels and blew it up. I thought I wrote it down. Oh, I think I have it on the back. Let's see. Oh,
Kind of
my
reminds me a bit of
glasses.
that Milkman character.
That's a Johnny Craig panel.
Oh, okay.
So let's see. Who was this? Who was that first one? That first one was... Come on out of there. Bernie Krigstein. That's a Bernie Krigstein panel.
Okay. None of those names you mentioned are familiar to me.
Oh, you don't know EC Comics?
I do not know names of EC Comics artists. Only a few that because they went from EC to the main. I don't want to say mainstream, but they end up at Marvel or DC. So I know of them from that era. I don't know much of the Golden Age era Is EC Golden Age or is that
I
early
think that's
Silver?
golden. If Silver Age starts in 56, then that's Golden Age still.
Right. So I don't know. I'm very illiterate in Golden Age stuff. Only a handful of things I know from early Timely,
Yeah,
and they didn't name everybody. So that's the other
right.
thing too.
Bernie Krigstein did what was the name of it? All of a sudden I forgot that famous story that just sold for $1 million or something to the Holocaust Museum over in Europe somewhere. It was the one, the Master Race. It was called. It's one of those stories. You've never seen that. It's one of those comic book stories that's been reprinted. I forget which. I even forget which comic it was in. That's been reprinted a million times. It's one of those. We want to show off the art of comics. Comic. You show off the Master Race. It's a story about a Jew who in New York City, and he sees someone he knows on the subway, and the guy on the subway, it's got all these fancy panels in them and stuff, and it's really cool the way he makes time, and eventually the guy like falls down and has a heart attack who he sees. And it's all about the guilt of this guy. I don't even know if the guy actually
I
recognized
think I
him, but
recall
it
that
turns out he was
story.
the commandant.
Oh, so did I get knocked off, or am I the only one here? I think I'm the only one here. Jared, I think got knocked off.
I tell you, sometimes it just throws me out. It's always when I move over to the comments, sometimes it just throws me out. He was the
Wow.
commandant of a concentration camp, it turned
Mhm.
out. And that's one of the most famous. I actually know when I first started at Marvel, and I didn't know who Bernie Krigstein was, and it was Ed Murr was there at the same time, and he was always showing John Romita his work. Ed was and talking to him about it, and John Romita told Ed that Ed's work reminded him of Bernie Krigstein. So like ever since then, Ed would be looking at Bernie Krigstein work. So that's how I got to know who Bernie Krigstein was. Picked up some Bristol a few hours ago, art store next to the comic store. Funny coincidence. And ordered some Rapidograph ink this week to fill up some old pens and get more use out of them. Good idea. Bernie Krigstein did work for Marvel in the early 50s, Paulo was. He was blacklisted for trying to organize a union. I'm still working, not just not taking calls. I'll be there in 45 minutes. All right. Hello, Mind the Comics. How are you doing? And like Jack Davis was Jack Davis,
Yes.
right? Yeah, him.
Yes.
Who was the other one? Johnny Craig. I think Johnny Craig.
The name is familiar.
He did a lot of work. I'm trying to remember if he did some work for Marvel or in the 70s, or that was somebody named Jim Craig. I can't remember. But yeah, Woody was from EC Comics too. Wally Wood, you know him, right?
Yes.
Who else was there? Graham Engels, Ghastly Graham Engels.
That name does not sound familiar to me.
If you see his work, you'll say, "Oh, Bernie Wrightson loved him."
Okay. Johnny Craig, according to the Marvel database, was an inker, Invincible Iron Man, and it's Craig.
Right.
And it has his work from EC Comics, so he's.
He
I
did
didn't know the name.
He did do some stuff for Marvel in the 60s, maybe.
Yeah, there's 60 books. They're Invincible Iron Man is when Iron Man and Namor was in the same book, Tower of Shadows, which might be a reprint book.
Yeah, that's a reprint book. That's one of those. They may have had a new story or two in it too, I think, or the covers. That's probably when Stan was looking for when Marvel was expanding, and Stan was looking for new old guys.
Right.
But yeah, Bernie Krigstein. I think at that time, Ed even bought a piece of original art from him, which was a paperback book cover. I have a stat of it some here. I'll have to bring it out one week. It was not. Yeah, Krigstein was not. Krigstein stopped working in the late 50s. Probably because, as Paulo said, he did some work for Marvel in the early 50s. He was blacklisted for trying to organize a union. He got out of comics and did other stuff. I mean, he did illustrations and stuff. He was one of those. He was one of the real. He was a real sort of artist in comics too. But he found it, especially EC comics. He found it because like have you ever seen any original EC comics art?
I've seen Silver Age art, maybe not necessarily from EC. I've seen in books. I don't think I've seen them close up.
What's different about EC is they lettered their books before they were penciled.
Okay.
So the writer would write them, send them to the letterer, and they'd have all the lettering in panels. And then the penciler, a lot of them were penciler inkers, would have to go in there and draw whatever was supposed to go in the panel. And Krigstein found that really restraining. So, like with the Master Race, he actually cut up the panels of lettering and rearranged them.
Okay.
Which you weren't supposed to do, but it's funny if you look at those old EC comics, it's really strange to know that the lettering was there first. Mm-hmm. So sometimes they were just illustrating the panels.
Right. That sounds so restricting.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes sometimes they come off as dull. I mean,
yeah, I would imagine so. As a letterer myself, there's sometimes no room,
right,
to put it on the page, and depending on the project, there's sometimes where I have to send it in and go, look, there is just not enough room. I can't change the artwork. You covered everything. Where can I put it? It has to be edited.
And EC, have you ever heard of the Leroy lettering machine?
Yes.
That's what they used to use at EC to make these mechanical letters.
Mm-hmm. I've heard about it. I've seen copies of what it looks like.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of it.
Yes, I've seen pictures. I've never actually seen it itself or it in use, but I've heard about it.
Right. I can't figure out how those old Leroy lettering machines worked. I think it was one of those things where there was like two pins where you moved the pen over here along the letter and it made the letter over here, and then it moved on. Like you here was the E. You'd move your stylus in where the E was, and it would mechanically make the E over here. And then you'd go to the next letter and it would make, L, then E, then R, then O, then Y. So it was sort of like draw typing. I think that's how it worked from what I could understand of looking at it.
Yeah, I've only seen pictures of it. I don't think I've ever seen it. I don't recall seeing it in use, but I've watched so many documentaries that they sometimes will show you something
and you
see it and you might have seen it in the background.
Right.
It was like that. Every now and then it pops up on my feed as the Marvel bullpen from the 60s. Was it 60s? It's the one with Herb Trimpe on it.
Oh, yes, the early 70s.
Yes.
Right,
so it's like that. I love seeing those and images from like what the bullpen looked like back then. Because it's just amazing just to see just that bit of history and
right.
In some cases how tight everyone worked next to each other.
Right.
It was little rooms here and there, all wall paneling and whatnot. Very, very office looking from that time period.
Oh yeah, interesting stuff. As far as EC, I'm sure other companies must have used it, but EC is the only one I know of that used the Leroy lettering machine.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if it was one of those cases where it was so expensive, they were the only ones using it, and everybody else was doing it by hand.
Could be,
because I could imagine something like that being.
Yeah, I can't imagine, a letterer wanting to buy one of those rather than a pen.
Yeah.
The barrier to entry was much cheaper with just a pen and some ink.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, I did buy some books on Sunday, so I haven't got
Ah,
new books. I got the books from back, but I haven't read them yet because you know how I like to buy books and just
never
keep
read
them
them.
and never read them. But hold on, let me grab them.
Okay.
And since I didn't read them, I'll just go through what I got, and then we could go back to the books that you're getting. So,
Yeah.
what started me back into comics is Amazing Spider-Man #3.
Oh, yeah.
It was a
We'll
nice.
give you a solo shot. Let's
Okay.
see.
So Amazing Spider-Man #3,
Okay.
the John Romita Jr. cover with Tombstone.
See, sometimes those relaunches work. Got you
Yep,
back buying some
got me
Spider-Man
back.
comics.
Uh, Power Rangers #20.
You're a Power Rangers fan? You're
I
young
am.
enough to be a Power Rangers fan?
I'm old enough to be a Power Rangers fan. I'm old. Well, when Power Rangers came out, I was 25.
Yeah, I was gonna say most
Yeah.
Power Rangers fans are 10 years younger, 15 years younger than yourself.
Since I was a fan of the kind of like the genre, because I knew a little bit
Okay,
about it before it came to America.
right.
And of course, I'm as a Godzilla fan.
Yep.
I picked up Power Rangers Godzilla #3. I still gotta find 1 and 2 because this came out a lot earlier than I expected it to come out. Because this was I was already kind of buying Power Rangers, but that is a series that I buy and I don't really read it. I just like the series. I like the art of it. I like how it's kind of not like the TV show because the TV show is really for kids. These are a little more of what I was looking for: superhero action adventure stuff. So that's 4 books. 3 of them are all actually Power Rangers and 1 Spider Man.
A few years ago, I bought a James Stokoe Godzilla series that was really good.
Oh, do
It's
you
you know who
remember the?
James Stokoe is?
The name is familiar, but
Yeah,
I'm not
he's an
positive.
indie artist. He's been around for a while now. He does some nice stuff. And it was like Godzilla, the half century war, maybe it was.
Yes, you have the Half Century War because I think it was IDW. We're putting out a bunch of different Godzilla
Right.
projects. There's Godzilla from Hell, which is fascinating because there's very little to no text in it, so you're
Yes, I remember that one.
just reading the
Right.
artwork, and then the various Godzilla projects from there.
Did you
Again,
get the half century war?
I believe I got it. I don't recall if I read the whole thing, but I do
Is it
remember the artwork. You could take me off the
solo now?
the solo.
He's done showing stuff. We'll
Mhm.
exit solo.
But I'm a fan of that type of stuff anyway. And then I work on my own kaiju comics when I
Right.
ever have the time, and I never seem to have the time. But
Yeah,
that's kind of my genre is is the superhero monster stuff.
right.
Is the next love I have in comics. So I have the superhero, is the core thing that I like, and then from that it branched out. So I'm slowly even going back and buying the giant monster Marvel books because they had a huge line of giant monsters.
Oh,
You
they
know,
had right, I remember buying, Godzilla when I was a kid.
mhm.
I was never a huge Godzilla fan, and it was never one of my favorite books, but, it was the late '70s, early '80s, so I was buying
It's
everything I
one
could
of
get
those
my hands
things.
on.
For me, it was one of those things like that's the only thing that existed
Right.
for Godzilla.
Yeah.
So because of that, I had gravitated to that. And then when Dark Horse did their series, that I really enjoyed
Okay.
because it looked like Godzilla.
Right. Did
So I
Art
enjoyed
Adams
it.
do some of that?
Art Adams did a lot of that, mainly the
Yeah.
covers, and he did a bunch of the series, a bunch of the one shots and stuff like that. Um, because of that, it's like, and he even did Godzilla in a Spider-Man book before it got to Dark Horse. There's
Ah,
a Marvel Team Up annual, I believe it is. I think it's definitely an annual. I don't know if it's Marvel Team Up annual, but it's Spider Man and the New Mutants, and the main villain is the Impossible Man. So at
ah,
some point, Warlock, who's also a shapeshifter, is fighting the Impossible Man. So they're shape shifting and fighting each other. And it's very Warner Brothers animated kind of,
ah.
they're fighting. And at one point, Warlock, I believe it is, or the Impossible Man. I forget which one of them turns into Godzilla, and it's a full Art Adams model Godzilla. Doesn't look like the Godzilla from the comic book. That's a different look. That's the Herb Trimpe look Godzilla.
Right.
It looked like Godzilla should have looked like. So to me, it was like, this is amazing. Art Adams should only be drawing Godzilla. That's the way. And then when he went in Dark Horse, they did those issues, and it was amazing to see. And again, it's one of those weird things with copyrights and license. Godzilla appeared a few more times in Marvel as to finish his story. He was in a couple of issues of Iron Man, but they changed the way he looked, and they had to change his name because it's a Toho project, and Toho does not let anyone really play with Godzilla. So, and again, this is during. I'm jumping back and forth, but the Marvel stuff, you had the Godzilla books, and then you had the giant robot series that they had, Shogun Warriors.
Oh yeah, I remember
based
that
on a toy line. Yep. Godzilla was part of that toy line, and there was never a crossover book. And it was the same art team.
Yeah.
That started and they were only a year apart from each other. They did overlap at one point of publishing dates. Same art team and never a crossover. You had a robot that was made to fight Godzilla and never fought him.
Who was it? Sienkiewicz who designed Warlock, or did he redesign him?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
I remember Sienkiewicz made them all angular and
I don't know if he actually invented him or not. I don't recall if he, because when I started New Mutants, I think he was already on the title.
Right.
So for me, he was always that was the look he had. I don't recall Warlock before him.
Wilson, did you ever have any of the Shogun Warriors toys?
I did not. I had a neighbor who had Godzilla. But I've seen them. I had neighbors and friends who had them. Oh, and I wanted them so bad, but I never got them. But that's why I ended up getting all the comics, because there was that was a nostalgia of, I want that, and I couldn't get it, so I had gotten the comics. Since then, I do have a Super 7 is the company. They made Godzilla, but in a small 6-inch figure. And that kind of that's neat. It only cost me $25 because I'm not going to pay $500 for a full completed in box big Godzilla, because I don't have money like that. If I found it in a garage sale, because every once in a while people will show up and say, "Look what I found for $10." It's like, But again, it was one of those toy lines that it's like, I would love to have that as a set just to have it. But again, it's one of those things like, I didn't have it. That's not that big of a deal. Where like the Secret Wars toys, I'll drop a couple of bucks on that because I had them.
Right.
But I pretty much have them all now, except for the 3 that came out overseas. And since they weren't really available in America, I'm okay not having them. And again, I'm not dropping $300 for an Iceman.
Yeah.
And then those are the prices of when I first looked. I don't know what they are currently.
Always the expensive one, wasn't he? I remember I remember people in the 80s saying Iceman was the expensive one of the Secret Wars toys or something.
Well, because they canceled the line. So Iceman, the Constrictor, Hobgoblin were all, and I'm forgetting one more, were all at the end of the line. And they didn't all get released in the United States. They end up going overseas because Mattel was basically, well, the line's dead. We have all these extra ones that are done. They repackage them, send them overseas. So you could get them in South America and in Europe. That's where usually a lot of these are coming from.
Okay, and Warlock was designed by Sienkiewicz, so that's why he's so funky looking. I didn't think he was redesigned by Sienkiewicz. Yep, those toys were before his time. Big. I
Very
think my
cool.
neighbor had one of those Shogun warriors. They wheeled. It's like they didn't bend and stuff. They wheeled. They were
Right.
big and they stiff and wheeled.
They have 5 points of articulation, if I remember correctly, if even. So
Oh,
the
that's right.
arms, the
The
arms
arms
move,
raised up and they
the
shot
arms
missiles.
raised, and it shot like a hand.
Yeah,
Godzilla would shoot a hand.
that's
Godzilla
right.
also had a flickering tongue,
Huh.
and then the Shogun warriors themselves will have like a type of missile launcher where it was a hand or a rocket or whatever, and those are the first things everyone would lose because they would play with them in their backyard and just shot it out.
They used Warlock's name because Adam Warlock was dead back when dead meant it. Yeah.
Mhm.
They wanted another Warlock. And the first of my comics that I got this week, actually, well, it's counting the Spawn, it's the second of my 14 comics, is Homesick Pilots number 15. And this is the last issue in the series. It wraps up the story. This one was a really weird story. The first story arc, it started out, it took place in the early 90s. And the Homesick Pilots is the name of their punk band. And in the back, we have the Nuclear Bastards was the name of their punk band. And they were kind of rival punk bands. And they ran afoul of this haunted house. Okay? So the first story arc was like these punk bands getting trapped in a haunted house. Then the second story arc, the next 5 issues, was the haunted house kind of kept the lead singer of this teen lead singer of this punk. They're either late teenagers or early 20s, I don't remember, of this punk band alive and was walking like the house. She was the house kept her alive, and the house could like get up and leave and walk around. Meanwhile, the Nuclear Bastards, like the lead singer of that, they started working for some agency that was working for the government, building this Gundam suit that's powered by ghosts.
Okay.
And then the third story arc was the ghost-powered Gundam suit versus the ghost-powered haunted house. So it was like, it turns really well done. The artist is what's his name? Casper Wingard, Wingard, Wingard. Writer is Dan Waters, and he was. I jumped on this because I liked his art in another series, and it was really interesting. The art's pretty. The art and color on this were really good. Let me see who's the colorist. Oh, it looks like he's coloring his own stuff. There's no colorist listed. But it came to a nice conclusion too. Series don't always stick the landing. This one stuck the landing. It was kind of appropriate and a little sad.
It's interesting. It kind of gives me it's Scooby-Doo meets
Yeah.
House of Mysteries with a little bit of Voltron.
There's one of the Gundam suits down the bottom that the mech, the ghost-powered mech Gundam suit that the woman is in. So it was good stuff, that Homesick Pilot. But it changed, like the difference between the first story arc and the second story arc was like, whoa, what's going on here? Because all of a sudden you go from, like I said, it was a kind of small story at first about this haunted house and these punk rock bands and the strange things that were happening because of those two elements mixing together. And then it just secret government base, giant robot. I was like, whoa.
That sounds very cool. I'm gonna have to look for a trade paper of
Yeah,
that one.
I think that they're getting the third trade out, so there should be three 5-issue trades. But really, like I said, I enjoyed that series. Good stuff, and it's one of those with the indie books I buy, you never know if they're limited series or continuing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I'm curious on something like that because working in the industry, there's something brave about being able to just stop a story
Yeah,
and end it especially if you haven't tried to do it for
I,
X amount of years, so you could keep that property going. But I do like the concept of being able to have a full story that gives you an ending that you would like.
I also wonder if things end too because there's just not the sales there. Like I don't know, I
Right.
don't think Homesick Pilots had tremendous sales of any kind. Maybe he was like, you know what, we'll do 15 issues of. Maybe after you do the first story arc, you go, we can get 2 more story arcs out of this.
Right. Which is a smart
Yeah,
idea
yeah,
to do it that way, where this way here, you don't get tired of the character
right.
or you don't go, I read this already.
Hmm.
I read this 20 years ago when the Hulk was gray and he was smart and the leader was the villain, written by Peter David. And
That
20 years later on the dot, the
Peter
Hulk is
David.
gray. The
just
villain is. Mhm.
just reminded me when we were talking about Art Adams before. I wanted to mention. I just saw this week a book Marvel came out with. They're bringing back the Art Adams, Walter Simonson, Fantastic Four, Ghost Rider, Spider Man. Who else was in
Ah,
there?
it was Ghost Rider, Spider Man, Wolverine, and the Gray Hulk.
The
I
Gray
know this
Hulk.
because I colored um, the Luke Ross issue that came out when he was working on Wolverine,
I,
and that story happened in there too, or they revisit those characters
right. Yeah, I
in
didn't
that
realize
story.
that came out in '91. That long ago. The original, that alternate Fantastic Four, whatever they're called.
Right.
I was like, wow, that was that long ago.
Yeah, they did that. That was that run, and then I think it was maybe Age of Apocalypse. During that run is where the Wolverine book revisit that team, or after the
Okay.
Age of Apocalypse. It was something where it was not 616 universe, because
Hmm.
there Spider-Man already had a child and they were the new Fantastic Four for a little while. And because the story just opens up with them having an adventure. So we don't know where the time shift happened in it.
Right.
So it's like, so for me, it's like, yeah, that in a way is my Fantastic Four because I got to work on it. I was part of that creative team. So they didn't call me so, but I wasn't part of the original team. So hopefully, if the series keep going and Luke Ross shows up again, maybe they'll call me. I doubt it, but I know that team well.
They I think Peter David's writing it. I don't know who the artist is, but he draws a bit like Art Adams.
Oh, okay.
I was like, oh, they found an Art Adams guy to do this. I don't think there's a lot of Art Adams guys around.
Yeah, Peter David has done a few revisits to some old stories.
Yeah.
I do know there's a Spider-Man fairly recently, or 2 years ago, where he was doing some stories that took place while Peter had the black costume, and it was
And
when the costume was stealing his body at night
if-
to go on adventures. And I think this is one of those adventures. So Peter's
ah,
asleep through it. So we never really knew what those adventures could have been.
ah. Yeah, I think he also brought back Maestro too the last couple of years.
Oh, okay.
That's Peter David, right?
That's
He
also
did
Peter Well, he
yeah,
was the one that first wrote Maestro,
right.
so
I think he was writing the new stuff too. That Gary Frank may have been drawing it. I can't remember now. I
no,
think it
I
was
didn't see those issues.
they came out just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, okay.
I read
Yeah.
some of it.
So it's kinda neat that there are some revisits to those stories.
And speaking of revisiting, another one I got this week, Shaolin Cowboy. What's the name of this one? Cruel to be Kin. Jeff Darrow. Have you ever read any Shaolin Cowboy?
I know of it, and I know I've read very early stuff when the first time those books came out. There was
I
like a series of books, and
There's
then it
not a
stopped,
lot of
and then
Shaolin Cowboy I found because I didn't. I think it was the one before this I bought the collected edition of. I can't remember the name of it because it's one big fight scene. It's one big detailed, choreographed, weird, imaginative fight scene. Like in this one, the Shaolin Cowboy has been fun. There's this like many tentacled thing right there.
Mhm.
that's got a guy riding it, and that's who he's been fighting for these 2 issues. And it's being narrated by a little lizard that's running along, but a just hatched little lizard who's telling him the story of his youth. He's actually older now and in a city, but this little like monitor lizard is telling you the story of his youth when he was just hatched. And the Shaolin cowboy he ran into Shaolin cowboy who was protecting him. And then there's this car full of skeletons that's trying to kill the Shaolin cowboy, while this giant amoeba with tentacles thing is trying to kill him too. And then after that, we get like he's fighting him. He fights flocks of killer birds are after him, all being orchestrated by this guy driving the giant tentacle thing. And then the last bird, he turns into a giant unfeathered bird. So it's like the fight scenes are just nuts. They're just crazy, nutty fight scenes is what it is. And it's so well.
And unfortunately, he was cut off. So I'm going to take over the show. It's my show now. So we'll continue showing off things. So
once again, I go over to the comments and it kicks me out.
Yeah, I tried to steal the show. I was going to start talking about little toys, but
okay.
You're back. Okay.
Most boring Dave Stewart. That's about all I had to say. Most boring Dave Stewart colors ever. Yes, Sleepy Reader was complaining about the Dave Stewart colors too. They're okay. It's the desert. It's browns, and desert colors aren't exciting.
And the detail that Daryl puts into it, they might not be time to color that book.
But I understand,
one panel worth of art. Some people don't even draw that much in a whole book.
So, what toy were you showing us?
Oh, I just grabbed something to just play around while you were gone. It's like I'm taking over the show. This is a moose. I believe it's a McDonald's moose. I believe it's probably a moose.
Squirrel to go with it.
No, it's not that far. I think this is Frozen. I think it's a moose from Frozen.
Oh, okay.
I got it when I bought I go to a thrift store a lot, so I bought a bag of toys because they had a couple of characters from the Superpower collection. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But in order to get those 2 toys that I wanted, you end up buying this bag for $5 full of toys. And unfortunately, and again, it's what you get in a thrift store. It's hit or miss. A bag of toys is going to 9 times out of 10 going to have a lot of McDonald's stuff in it, because every kid that bought a Happy Meal will have those toys. And since it's a corporation, McDonald's, there are millions of these things. So they don't really sell on eBay because there's too many of them. They're not as collectible as you think. The older stuff is, and some stuff you could find which are cool. So like I have a lot of the Spider-Man ones. The Spider-Man that came out in the 90s, right after that cartoon show came out, right around the time the movie came out. There were a bunch of Spider-Man toys and the X-Men toys. So Spider-Man, X-Men, that block of early 90s Marvel toys seemed to sell. But then again, that's because they were a 30-year-old item, compared to the moose that's just here.
Look, Tim is here with us tonight too. How you doing?
How you, Wilson? How's everybody doing?
We're doing all right over here.
Wife is in Knoxville working. I got home 10 minutes ago from work. I'm like, why not?
Come on in. The water's fine.
Nice. See if I can hear y'all better. Let me turn the volume up. Oh, y'all been having a good day?
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, talking comics, giant robots.
Shaolin Cowboy, I was just talking. Always fun.
I always feel like there's supposed to be some secret message that we're supposed to get out of Shaolin Cowboy, but that was like in 2008 or something last time I read that.
It's just I used to think the same thing too. I'd be like, it took me a while to get into Shaolin Cowboy, just because I'm like, this is just a fight scene. What am I missing?
Yeah, I was a Jeff Darrow fan. Don't get me wrong, like I liked his stuff, but when I met him at Heroes Con and saw his sketchbook, and I was the only guy could tell him who Goldar was and the Space Giants. If you go way back in your stuff like that. I actually like almost pushed two people out of the way. Like we're going to talk. Y'all don't know what you're talking about. And we had this great talk about like, Goldar and Spectre Man and a little bit of Ultraman. And I was like, I never thought I figured if I met Jeff Darrow, it would be like his comics work and what's
Right.
it like with
You
it.
never know.
No, we're just two guys geeking out over TBS shows from 1980 reruns, It was awesome.
Let's see. The next comic I got this week, Nocterra, issue number 11. And the best way I can describe it's done by Scott Snyder, Tony S. Daniel, and Marcelo Maiolo. And it's solid. It's like mainstream superhero guys do an indie book. And it's a solid story. I enjoy it, but it's a solid B, but sometimes it's got the same problems that I'd see in a mainstream movie or comic. It's like sometimes the characters act like characters in a movie. And you're like, they've got a plan, and the plan would work if the person would just follow it, but the person's like, no, I'm not leaving you here to face the big villain yourself. I'm going to ignore the whole plan that would defeat the big villain and jump on with you. And the person's like, what are you doing? You've got to do the whole plan to defeat the big villain. Why are you coming to help me? I couldn't just leave you here to die. And you're like, and sometimes it's just like, you know what? I've read this before. There's a lot of it that's interesting, but sometimes it's like, since they're such mainstream guys, you get a mainstream story, even if it's an indie book. But there was some good gore in it and some nice, and you think somebody is dead, but they rise at the end. You're like, oh, they're not really dead. Oh, they're not really. It's like, okay, I knew that was coming too.
The movie cliches are all there, man.
Yeah. So
headshot.
It's well done, but you're gonna put up with that stuff, But how often do mainstream guys don't do indie books that often? So, and like I said, it's well enough done that it's kept me buying it. I don't know how much longer it's going to go on, but
man, what's up? Well, I think I'm having a lull here, when it comes to comics. I haven't really been getting that much, and I'm going to be pouting tomorrow because I'm not going to Heroes Con.
That's no fun not going to a con, but I haven't been to a con in years. So.
Well, I got the money to go if I wanted to go, but I cannot justify it being the gas money. And then, I did the math. It
just adds up too much.
Yeah. So, I was playing around with it, took some, Hail Marys with some of my friends, like, if we split it, everybody around here is having the same thing. It's about 3 hours away, and it would be $200 in gas round trip, maybe.
That's a big drive too.
Yeah. So I'll just take my $100 and go to mycomics.com. I don't know, but anyway. Yep. But I've been getting books that I read when I was a kid or was in the house. And the funny thing about this is that it's more of a chore than you think because I don't remember the titles. I'm a visual guy. I remember the covers. Okay.
Yeah,
so
typing stuff. That's why there was a plus sign.
So the first one, I remember this cover forever, and I about kicked myself when I saw who the author was because I was reading the short stories in this book when I was 7. And then when I was like 9, and when I was like in 1991, it took me 15 years to really like read everything in this book because it was just floating in the house. And there was a guy who used to have a YouTube channel that I have on Instagram and Facebook. And out of nowhere, after trying to remember what this book was, because I remember the cover, and when I show it to you, you'll see why. He just out of nowhere posted it. And I was just like, oh my God. So I found a good copy of The Best of El Sprague the Camp. And on the cover, if it's going to show up, it's a hunter who looks like a Stan Lee flim flam man over, standing over a purple dinosaur, Yeah. And what got me is I never would have thought about El Sprague the Camp because if I'm not wrong, I have his Conan stuff, right?
Yeah. He was a Conan guy.
Yeah. And I didn't realize he'd been writing since 1938. There are short stories in here from 1938. This came out in 1978, a collection of his short stories.
Uh-huh.
And what I like about reading this stuff as a kid is I need to write down what I think I remember, how the stories are. This has happened with some Batman comics and stuff. But the stories in my head are so expanded that I'm remembering stuff that wasn't in the books, you know? So my favorite story out of this is that, and hey, grain of salt here, who knows, But I think this has like 17 or 19 short stories. But one of my favorite short story out of it is, I got a thing for cavemen and Bigfoot in fiction. I'm there. Primitive stuff, post-apocalyptic, and Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, whatever. But what happens is that everybody's sort of getting sick or something. And what's going on is we're de-evolving. The whole world is slowly growing hair over their whole body. And he gets over how it has a nice sheen. And he never says it, but we've all turned into Bigfoot. Our recessive genes are coming back out because of sunspots or something. And he was just so eloquent, and it had like a pinch of humor in it, but the tone was very like it was really happening. And everybody just, after they were freaking out, they just sort of accepted we're Bigfoot again. But we all had very nice sheens. We're very healthy with the sheens on our fur. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah. And the second thing here is when you're 12, there's things that just you read because it sounds so exciting when you're 12, right? Mm-hmm. And again, I just remember the cover of this book. And I've been reading the Remo Williams Destroyer books, got a whole bunch of them. And I'm like, I want that. So I probably was doing Monkey See, Monkey Do, where everybody, my stepdad's friends were all reading Remo and all this stuff. I wanted something of my own at 12. So I remember walking into the drugstore, and they actually had pulp books like this on a spinner rack. And I'm like, there's got to be something I can read at 12, sixth grade, right? So I remember the cover for it. So I got TNT. This came out in 1985. I remember there were 3 or 4 books that came out. So I was reading this in 6th and 7th grade. And the cover, I drew this cover all the time in study hall or when I was doodling. It reminded me, to me, it's very Mike Zeck. Have I already shown this?
I think you showed that last, because that's a Paul Gulacy cover.
Yeah, that's what we were thinking. Yeah. Well, I'm probably going to get around to reading it since I already showed it. I can't keep track. But I remember.
Okay. We'll look at it again.
Yeah. Well, I didn't read the back of it. Imagine you're 12 years old, right? And you're looking for something to read. And first of all, I'm like, if you're into comics, you're going to notice this, right?
Yeah.
So it says, meet Anthony Nicholas Twin, a new kind of hero for a new kind of world. 1985, folks. Okay. A man who's lived through hell and can now kill in the dark like a cat. That's what I remember about the book when I read it. When I got fascinated, I'm like, they're just ripping off Wolverine, sort of. I think he could see in the dark, and I think he had like super senses. You know what I mean? Like Daredevil-like. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Who's lived through hell and now can kill in the dark like a cat. A man forced to steal a secret formula that makes gasoline cheaper than water. A man faced with go figure, like we could use that now. A man faced with an army of women made deadly by insatiable lust. And there you go. Okay.
That was the line, wasn't it?
That was 12 years old. I'm like, all right. And October, sweet innocent October, with the body of a goddess, the mind of a child, and the luck of the damned. TNT. It begins beyond anything you have ever experienced before. Not probably like $1.95 back then. So when you're 12, that's everything you want to read right there. He kills beautiful women are trying to kill you, and sweet October, whoever she is, she sounds wonderful.
That reminds me of buying those. I was at my comic shop this week, and there's Paolo. One of my friends, the guy who used to run the shop. He ran it for about 10 years ago. But he was buying some random 1980s Captain Americas, like a stack of them. I'm like, what are you getting those for? He's like, I'm replacing my childhood collection.
Yeah.
He's like, when I left for the army after high school, my mother made me get rid of all my comics, so now I'm buying them all back.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny that as a grown man, I've luckily got probably 90% of all the comics I ever had,
Me
and
too.
I'm doing the opposite. I'm getting the grown up real read, the real books, the real novels, no pictures. Those books with no pictures. I think it's like it's sort of like growing in reverse. Like I had the Mustang when I was a kid. Now I want the minivan. I'm like, I got my
How are you
midlife
tonight,
crisis.
Paolo?
Oh, I finally got off work.
All right.
I hear you, brother. I hear you.
Yeah. But I'm going to pull an Eric Breen here. So 1, 2, 3. Actually, it's that
I've got
old.
a little tiny bottle of soda pop.
Yeah, not so. Yeah, the Irish kind. Yeah. Last week I had a great lunch with all my old journalist colleagues, and we had a Jameson Christmas tree. And I pulled out 4 bottles. Already spent one. Actually, I'm going to try one of the other ones.
No, here's another comic I got this week, which actually came out last week. And the funny thing is, this is Grimm #2, which has some really nice art in it, and a story about a bunch of Grim Reapers. They're people who shepherd people to death, and strange things happen where she got that to figure out why these strange things are happening. But the first 2 issues are real well done. Let's see, who's it by? Stephanie Phillips and Flaviano. If that's illustrated, that's his only name we get, Flaviano. Colored by Rico Renzi, lettered by Tom Napolitano. Well, what's funny about this is, since 2 weeks ago, my comic shop didn't get the comics in, so I wasn't able to get this till this week. But what happens is, every week I get an email from my comic shop, final order cutoff, where I can just click on it and order comics. I can either get the individual issue or put it on my pull list. So I got the first issue of this, and usually final order cutoff is the week after the issue comes out. So I buy the issue on Wednesday. The following Monday is final order cutoff for the next issue. So I said, so there were 2 books, Grimm and 8 Billion Genies. They both came out last week. I only ordered issue 2 of both of them. I mean, issue 1. And then I was like, then I ordered issue 2. I ordered issue 2 of both of them. That's right. But I didn't put them on my pull list, saying after issue 2, I'll decide if I put them on my pull list or not. But since it didn't come in, I was like, all right, I guess I'm getting issue 3 to decide it. So on the final order cutoff, I put and got issue 3. Then this week came around, and 8 Billion Genies didn't come into my shop. I'm like, did I decide? Because sometimes I don't remember. If I go, do I want to put that on my pull list or order one more issue or not bother? And then I do it. I go, I'll order one more issue, and then I don't think about it. So I might not have ordered issue 2 of 8 Billion Genies, and I might just be getting 1 and 3. But Grimm is good enough to go on the pull list. I think, like I said, the artwork in it was just good. Like I said, I am usually against stories involving living embodiments of things, just because I find that it's one of the reasons I've never been a fan of Sandman, the living embodiment of death, the living embodiment of potatoes, the living embodiment of sleep, whatever they are. I just find it like a shortcut to creating characters. I hate
to correct you with the living embodiment of potatoes. That's Swamp Thing, sir. No.
Which I just saw in the comic shop news an upcoming Swamp Thing where he meets with because you know how there's the Parliament of Trees in Swamp Thing that Alan Moore invented way back when, and then other guys have added other parliaments since then.
You got derivative, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
They mentioned Swamp Thing has to meet with the Parliament of Gears. Like, what are they, race cars? There's a Parliament of race cars? That book's going to be a Paolo's alley.
Well, just to let you know, it's funny you're saying this. I'm not going to go get it, but I'm upstairs. I have 2 short boxes up here, and one of them happens to be my 95% of my Swamp Thing collection.
Right.
Okay.
Listen, I like the original of Alan Moore stuff, of course, but eventually it got turned into. Someone else said this. They turned it into the Green Lantern.
Well, Swamp Thing never. The thing that's it. Okay, what's happened with Swamp Thing is we have 20/20 vision, in my opinion, of the whole. Everything that's happened since then. And the truth is, they had some shining moments, some good things, some not so good things. Swamp Thing has never gotten out of the shadow of what Alan Moore did. You can't touch it.
They've been regurgitating Alan Moore's stories for 30 years. It's crazy.
But I mean,
Gears. Really?
That's the funny thing about time. You know what I mean? Alan Moore hasn't written a Swamp Thing since what, 86 or 87? Seriously. And that was its glory days. And what you're saying, I mean, I'm with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm agreeing with you. And what you're saying is what I've noticed when I've tried to go back and reread it. Mark Miller and Grant Morrison, they even tried to undo. They got meta with the whole Alan Moore thing about him not being Alec Holland. And they brought Alec Holland back and commented on that era. You know what I'm saying? They can't get away with it. I haven't read a Swamp Thing book since they gave him vines and they tried to make him look like Alan Moore. And nobody caught that. Nobody caught that's what they were doing. They were like, Grim, he's got long hair.
And Grim, they're Grim Reapers, but they're not really the living embodiment of stuff. They've kind of got their own person. One's an 80s rocker. She's just, I mean, the lead is just kind of your manic pixie dream girl.
There's an Australian web comic made with Legos. It's got multiple strips, and one of them has a bunch of Grim Reapers. They call themselves the Deaths, and there's a couple of them who complain that they never get anything to do because some are the death of being run over by a car, the death of falling off a building, and there are a few who are the deaths of very unlikely events, and even then they keep messing up. So one of them gets demoted to a fate worse than death.
But good, like I'm really enjoying the artwork. The story's fine, so Grimm's going on the pull list. 8 billion genies. I don't know if I ordered issue 2, but I'll get issue 3.
I can't see it being hard to get, sir. I'm just saying. You know what I mean?
They could probably reorder. But do I want to bother? Do I want to just go,
You're going to find it if you would cruise through the dollar boxes. I was saying 6 months that you were going to pop.
My comic shop actually don't put stuff because for just this reason. They don't put stuff in the dollars box. Well, they don't really have many dollar boxes, first of all. They got some in the back. But it's like he's like, I can't put the indie stuff in the dollar boxes for years. Because then people like me would be like, what the? I just paid $4 for this, and a month later it's because I see, like, I've seen on YouTube guys who buy their Marvels and DCs out of the dollar boxes as a matter of course. And I'm like, what kind of shops can do that where in 3 months their comics are in the dollar boxes? That's kind of put off new comic sales.
Well, I tell you what, I got a theory here lately that at least this summer and stuff, I'm seeing less and less dollar boxes. Now they're $2 boxes and $3 boxes. So no big deal, gas, inflation, whatever, changing times. I'm adapting better. But what I ended up noticing over the last week and a half or something like that, the spec channels have finally figured out that you really can't have 10 great books to get every week that are blowing up. So now they're doing things like books you need to find in the dollar boxes. And I'm like, those sons of bitches. Is this their fault? Is this them? Is that why we don't have dollar boxes anymore?
I don't know. I don't know if you were here the week where I heard a new term. I heard it from Erod, one of the New York Warriors. He didn't make it up. He heard it from one of his friends because he. I don't know if you follow Erod or any of the New York Warriors on YouTube. But they mostly are buying spec books or books for they're not buying them to read. I'm sure to read a lot. They do a lot of stuff, hot books or whatever like that. But since these days everything is a key, the term was Erod said, and this one he's like, my friend said he called it a forever key. Hulk 81 would be a forever key. I'm like, key issue has been so devalued on these YouTube channels that are all about key issues that they had to come up with a new term, a forever key.
See, I'm trying in my mind to act like the hobby is evolving, and it's not. And the fact that I say spec is me trying to.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm saying groovy to my kids because Spec is Pee Wee Herman's dog. It's a dog this big with a bowl that big. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm trying. I'm like, how much? I don't know, man. Yeah, I'm not going to go on the rant. It's not really a rant. It's me just trying to get in the mindset of how can you have fun being reactionary and then spending a lot of money. What, you know what I mean? When you could just find stuff you like, I don't know,
Yeah.
I get the fun of finding a nice, expensive book in a dollar bin. That's cool,
Well, for the readers, the cartoonist kayfabes, they believe that, or at least they try to pass the idea that the books they talk about become highly sought out after they mention them, so they call it the kayfabe effect. Right. But it does appear that their viewers actually want to read stuff.
They just want to own. Well, I think that's a thing. A lot of collectors just need stuff to collect. They want to own it. They don't necessarily want to read it. Like I said, I always say the comic collectors are a spectrum. From on one end is the reader who reads a comic and then throws it in the trash, doesn't care. And the other end of the spectrum is the guy who buys the comic, bags it, boards it, tapes it up, puts it away, and never reads it. And we all fall somewhere on that spectrum. We're, of course, all closer to that reader end around most of us who read our comics, but some people fall closer to that other end.
Up until about the last 5 years, everybody I interacted with, including YouTubers and stuff, read their books, or at least read a majority of their books. Everybody, has those books they'll get and kind of put up and not read, or they do. Part of the collecting was finding that book you did collect just to have it. That's like a part of it. So your spectrum you're talking about, that to me, that spectrum didn't really pop up with everybody that I interacted with. Because we would sit around and talk about what was going on in the book,
Like the New York Warriors, to use them as an example. When they first started on YouTube, I think Big E said he started maybe 7 years ago. They were Wednesday Warriors and bought all their books, and they bought stuff on spec too, but they bought and read books too. Then I think it was like Big E's from Staten Island, and what's that? The store he went to closed. Something Jones. It was a big store in Staten Island, but they closed. And after it closed, he never got another pull list at another store. So he became almost all spec, where he'd buy stuff. And so it's like they kind of slowly drifted towards that collector end.
Yeah.
So I think that happens. And I think that happens too to people who are like mainstream comic fans, but don't like mainstream comics anymore. Because I would say like the maximum you can be a mainstream comic book fan is probably a decade. And if you start at 12, you're done by 22. And if you start at 22, you might be done by 28. But you can find other comics. You can still be a comic fan, but you're not going to be a mainstream comic fan.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of those people move towards, they still want to get comics. They still want to get the characters that made them happy in their youth, but they don't necessarily want to read them. So they just kind of buy the stuff that they think is cool, not reading it.
Yeah, and Paulo probably know more about. I don't know. I think I've mentioned this. Paulo, I'm not going to speak for you. I think you might know a little bit more than this. It seems like there's been a comment or a conversation before, but you got to understand. Also, in the last, we'll say 2014 or something like that, a lot of people came over here from their Gamergate trying to get into something new to collect. So we had an era there of people starting up YouTube channels and getting into the hobby because their hobby went to shit, and they admitted it. They actually said this isn't like me guessing or anything like that. So there's been like new people coming in from different places in the hobby that's never had it before, and that's because of the internet.
I've noticed that every 3 or 4 years, there's a new set of YouTubers.
Oh yeah. We're like in the 25th generation, man. We're I mean, I'm surprised we're not looking inbred. But anyway, but kind of hopping off what you said, the people who I've found that stay in the comics the longest are the ones who actually read the books.
Right.
No certain age of when they started. You know what I mean? But the people who come in doing what they're calling the spec thing and stuff like that, they don't last long. So I'll be really interested to see. That's why I'm saying I don't know how long the spec thing will go on, because it's the 90s. They're going to find out their investment isn't an investment.
I think there's always new people for spec reasons. So it's like
it's a cycle.
On the spec side, there's been new people come. They come and they go. They come and they go. I mean, if
I think YouTube.
Leave the hobby, anyone can.
Yeah, but I think YouTube brought in more people than we were expecting in terms of speccers. Because there's always been speculators going back to the 1960s. Yeah. The thing is, just as we had the 1990s boom of civilians coming in for stupid reasons, now it's not. It was this change of medium allowed other people to find out about comics and hearing for the first time that there are some comics who are worth money. And all of a sudden, I think these guys are smarter than the people from the 90s. But they're still trying to stretch out this period as much as they can and see if they can still make some money off of it.
I think kind of bouncing off what you're saying, I kind of think the information is easier to find. It's not like you're starting from scratch trying to figure this out. You got people online telling you what you get. All you got to do is watch a trailer to a Marvel movie and do a Google search. Wikipedia has improved greatly in 10 years with what's on there that's comics related and stories and series.
I think it's gotten worse. I got a 96 when the speculated crash happened. When did it come? It's different now.
Yeah.
And I think it came back with maybe in the aughts, middle of the aughts, with when they started doing the limited edition covers.
Yeah.
I think that really brought a lot of people into speculations. And then of course, they got into all sorts of other stuff. But I think making those 1 in 50 covers got people chasing them.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I think the smart people quickly moved on from those to the forever keys. But there's still some people chasing those limited edition covers. But I think that's what did it. That's what the speculation was in. And that drove a lot of stuff in comic shops.
Yeah,
it's time for you guys to sell your keys. I already did.
Now, there was an era in the 90s, I've said it before, where I really did. I think it was maybe 6 months. I was hardcore. That's when I was trying to get the keys and the collectibles and stuff. Miserable. I'm serious, man. I was miserable doing that. So I don't try to wrap my head around how people enjoy that. You know what I'm saying? I'm never going to understand it just because it's me. So it's not a judgment. Yeah. But like the CGC stuff, I'm still not really on board with it, because the thing about it is it's a rarity. Some people hit an error there where that stuff is all cataloged. You can get on their site, I guess, and see how many 9.8s in this book and stuff. The more people do it, the less rare those are going to become. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But if I had an expensive book I wanted to sell, I might slab it. That's the only reason I can see slabbing.
Well, I can see being a buyer and knowing exactly what you're getting after some bad experiences on eBay. So I mean, there's pros and cons.
I can understand
to it. Yeah,
but this obsession with 9.8s of comics that came out last week is funny.
I don't get why there's no specking on trade paperbacks. Because the ones that are out of print, they do get expensive. But they're not mentioned as collectibles.
Well, let me tell you something. Now that I found out that you can get your VHS tapes graded and sealed up, give it time, sir. Give it time. You know.
Because I remember Essential, even 15 years ago, Essential Conan, that thing went up like crazy.
Yeah. All the dark.
Yeah. By the way, Titan Books now has the Conan license.
Yes, I'm excited about that. Get it the hell away from Marvel. I mean, I know there people have enjoyed some of the stuff, but having him mixed with superheroes just never. Yeah,
Because of the print runs, you know that trade paperbacks, the people who buy them read them, and they don't
Yeah.
want to sell them. So if you're out looking for trade paperbacks, you're out of luck.
I was excited as hell to get the phone book Savage Sword of Conan Volume 1 from Dark Horse, and I was like, "Oh, I found my thing. I'll be able to." No, those I don't know if they're expensive. Like what? I mean, I don't know if they're the value of them now, but man, people were getting those. I saw some of those go for $50, $75, and it's exactly what you said. The people getting those are reading them and holding on to them. Oh man, I thought I was like in for a treat, and I'm like, it's too competitive to get those.
The
Yeah.
problem with trade paperbacks is, like most stuff, only a certain small percentage of them is valuable. The vast majority of trade paperbacks you can't sell used for $5.
Yeah. Well,
Unless
I'm telling
something
you, I'm telling you what,
desirable and out of print.
I'm being serious. They're going to find a way to make those. They're going to find some way to make them collectible. You know what I mean? Like they're going to
If it's
find
out of
something.
print, it could be collectible. If it's in
Yeah.
print, it's not collectible.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Well, I'm saying the way things have gone, like I said, VHS tapes that are graded are worth money now. VHS tapes, things that I mean, I have a VHS collection. I'm telling you, man, it's probably going to have a 15-year lifespan starting now with some of the things. But you can get them sealed. I could, yeah. Mark, bless his heart, Marky and I, Marky three, one of the New York Warriors and I here recently.
It's been on in a while, yeah.
Yeah, he found my wife the Spice World VHS. I found him a Tim Burton Batman. He sent me the link. This is through Facebook. Marky's a great guy and stuff, but he opened up a whole world to me for a night when I was just going down this rabbit hole. Like, holy shit,
Wilson, I bet you have tried to sell some trade paperbacks online, being that you probably got a bunch of them from Marvel like I did.
I have. I'm not looking at them. I'm looking towards where they are. I have 4 to 5 diamond boxes. All trade paperbacks.
Have you ever tried to sell them?
This shelf that I have behind me are my trade paperbacks that I kept, mainly because I was just tossing them on the shelf when I moved in. And it's like, now I'm out of room. What do I do with the rest of them? I kept them in boxes. I have not tried to sell them because I did not think they would sell. Because in my mind, trade paperbacks, the reprints, they're all over the place.
Well, the problem is like a few of the more desirable out of print ones would sell. The vast amount of it. Matter of fact, Marie Javins, who is now the editor-in-chief of DC Comics, used to sell her trade paperbacks on a stoop sale in Jersey City for $5 a piece. And she was the only one I knew who could get rid of all her trade paperbacks because she literally would sit on her front stoop with boxes of trade paperbacks, $5 a piece, and people would come up and buy them. But if you don't have a stoop in the middle of a city somewhere, they're tough to sell, even for $5.
I never sold them at the cons. And they would be, as you mentioned before, special ones would sell. I had no problem. Oh,
Kitten time. Let's give Kitten a solo.
Yeah. Oh, he's got me. He's
digging those claws in. Solo, Kitten.
This is Lester Sad Eyes McDougal, folks. Right there. Yeah. He's purring really loud. Yeah.
I had no problem selling hardcovers.
Yeah, hardcovers.
Marvel. I made good money on Marvel Masterworks.
In the late '90s, those were really.
They were really popping. They were. My early eBay's memories are selling those.
A lot of people in Marvel were selling those things.
Yeah,
Masterworks always fluctuate because people want to have a run of them. And some of them are always going out of print for 3 to 5 years.
Yes.
I have volumes. Okay, Ollie's has been great, right?
$1,000 Ghostbusters VCR.
Oh wow! Ollie's has been great because discount store getting a lot of stuff. But when they first, I think it was 2018 when they first got all that $13 million worth of warehouse stock from DC. They had hardcovers of Mad Magazine, 3 and 4, and that's when I found out volumes 1 and 2 are worth money. So there are trades and hardbacks, like you're saying, worth some money, but it's probably exactly what you're saying. They're out of print. But
I sold my 1 and 2 of Mad on eBay.
I have the first print of the first Sandman trade, the Doll's House that came out, right? And that's supposed to be like a $40 to $50 book because it's a first print, and that's actually what made the trades supposedly really blow up, with the Sandman. So that's why I'm convinced somewhere along the line there's going to be some hook. Maybe it'll be the first print, or like you're saying, just out of print, or something like that. I'm convinced somewhere along the line, maybe in the next, maybe 10 years from now, all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, there's a market for trades.
It'll be Sandman, probably.
there'll be some niche, they'll find something to make it worth something,
I got a comic to send Howler to his comic shop. Albatross Exploding Funny Books, #1.
I am already regretting I did not pre-order that.
Eric Powell, the Goon.
Yep.
Here we've got a Territory. We've got a La Diabla story. We've got a Hillbilly story. We've got a Lester of the Lesser Gods story, and we've got a Goon story. So he's just making an anthology out of all his own comic books, and of course it's all Powell, so it's all good.
See, I didn't get it because I didn't know Powell was doing everything in it, So that's why I didn't get it. He did a bait and switch with his new Goon series,
All of a sudden he wasn't doing any of the Goon. I was like,
right.
Why am I buying this? Eric Powell. It was like they actually did a nice job with it, but it was not Eric Powell. So I was like, why am I buying an indie comic not by the creator?
Yeah. And they didn't get in who was actually doing the book. They said from Eric Powell, don't get me wrong, but they where they didn't have, written and drawn by Eric Powell, I was like, oh no, they're not getting me again. They didn't get me the first time, but yeah.
But I didn't get the there was a Lester of the Lesser Gods one shot, which I missed. Never got that one. So this is the first Lesser of the Lesser Gods story I've read, but it was pretty good. And I don't know if La Diabla is somebody new or not. She's this motorcycle rider who hunts down child molesters or child kidnappers or something. So that was new to me. I don't know if this is her first appearance or she's been somewhere else. But good stuff. Eric, straight up mainline, some Eric Powell. Good stuff.
His first 12. Oh, go ahead. I heard somebody talk. I'm still a little bit disappointed that his first 12 issues of Hillbilly didn't blow up. He had a 3D issue in the middle of that. That was the best use of 3D. Hillbilly is fantastic.
I like Hillbilly better than his Goon, even.
Yeah, to me, they're different beasts, and I don't ever want Goon and Hillbilly to ever meet because the tone is completely different. They should not meet. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Do
you guys think artist editions keep their value? If they're out of print, they go up.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed.
Yeah.
So I would think so. Especially, I mean, there's probably some that don't. I imagine there's some undesirable artist editions, but I don't know what they are. Did they check that Ghostbusters tape is not cut by 5 minutes of porn in the middle? Nah. Probably the Ghostbuster tape was still sealed, I imagine, because
I thought it was the Rescuers that had that from Disney. Oh, sorry.
I'm just saying,
no, the Rescuers was something different.
Yeah, it was just a picture of a naked lady. I think a poster in there.
There's a window scene, and the naked lady's in the window. A half a second.
Yeah,
of a shot. But that's a old animators type of thing that sometimes they'll sneak something in, but it's really snuck in there just to be shown at when they're showing the dailies to each other to see if anyone's paying attention. Those are usually taken out, but every once in a while something will slip through.
That's like approved by the Comic Craft Society. Back when I was doing covers for Marvel, every now and a comics code was still in effect. Every now and then, what's his name? Comic Craft, Richard Starkings, would be doing the cover copy for a comic. This is in the digital age. I think it was in the digital age still. Yeah, it must have been. Because otherwise it would be deleted. It never would have got on there. And occasionally when he's doing sometimes he'd be doing the logo and if it was a special, usually we had all that stuff set up already. But sometimes he would be doing a special job for someone where he's doing the logo and maybe a new corner box layout, some cover copy, that sort of thing. And he would sometimes put in where the comics code goes, approved by the Comic Craft Society. But he made it look just like the Comics Code logo. And every time one of those would come through and I'd have to delete it and put in the Comics Code logo, I'm like, one day someone's not going to notice. And the Comic Craft logo, approved is going to print. And sure enough, it actually did once, at least once. When all of a sudden it was like, oh, it says Comic Craft on there when it says it's like, I told you it was going to slip through. He made it look exactly like the Comics Code. You shouldn't be doing that. Just put the Comics Code on. But it was funny. It actually, but no one ever noticed.
Well, if they could have Neil Adams drawing a cover where Batman has no shirt on, but he's holding his entire Batman outfit, and nobody put that together.
He had no shirt on but pants.
Mm-hmm.
And he was holding up the Bat outfit that had another pair of pants on it. So Batman wears a pair of pants under his pair of pants.
Yeah, and I think I can't remember, I think they were telling Neil Adams, like, that just makes no sense. And he was like, they're never going to notice. And nobody did for decades,
And that's the thing. I mean, I'm almost afraid to talk about this, but this is going to create a new collection.
Uh-oh.
This is going to create a new forever comic.
Forever key.
There is, and I don't know if I mean, the story's old, so there is an issue of Kazar with curse words on the cover.
Yep. Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yep.
Because in the inks of the grass, you have the F word in that.
The guy got fired, and he was like, all right, before he turned into his last work, and he sent that in there. Yeah. And then there was oh man, I can't remember. There was a Spidey one shot that came out with Universe X, and in the bookcase there was Al Milgrom had wrote. Who was it? Bob Harris got fired.
Bob Harris,
and he was
Bob Harris, and
screw Bob Harris.
Yeah, sideways on all the books on the bookshelf, he wrote this little. Yeah,
couldn't have happened to a nicer guy or something like that.
But I think the more popular one there was for a little bit during the 90s was a Terminator that Alex Ross did the cover for. And I have it. And, you're seeing like the, the electronic lettering and stuff. And it's supposed to be numbers because it's Terminator from Now Comics. And he puts backwards Now Comics blows. He's done with them,
Do you remember, Wilson, the from the early 90s, the penis and the Captain America hardcover?
My first couple of weeks on the job, we as in Gary Guzzo was the marketing manager. We ran conventions and promotions, and they was basically an email or call came in that do all these books have it, and it's a Captain America reprint book. It's reprinting.
It was a 2 hardcover set of Golden Age Captain America.
That got into a big slipcover kind of.
Yeah, it was slipcovered, 2 hardcover set. I mean, expensive. This is like 1992.
Yeah, very expensive. We went into the library because I was the only person who had a copy of the book.
Right.
Peter had a copy of the book, so we went to the library. That's the first time I believe I went into the Marvel library, and we went to go actually look at the book. And on the book, someone put a layer, which isn't hard to do if
here it is. There was a disgruntled guy at the printers. This happened.
Right. That's where I was
once
gonna
again,
go
I
with
think
it.
the story when he had gotten fired, but he was still there.
He was still there, and he drew a penis on Bucky.
Bucky
who
is
was
like strapped
in
to a
bed.
table.
I thought he was in bed. I
I
thought
can't
there was
maybe
a white
in bed. He was
was-
lying
was-
down, definitely.
like he was lying down. I believe there was either a white sheet on him or something like that. But in yellow,
Yeah, just the
there-
yellow plate.
just
in
the yellow plate was
So
a crudely drawn penis on there, but it was obviously a penis. Although it just looked like a very long C on this. The guy I don't think was an artist. And it was on there, and there was nothing we could, do about it because it was already printed. But
yeah,
as
nobody
far as
caught
I'm
it because
aware-
it was
no one
like
caught it.
it was yellow on white.
Right.
So
And that's the thing. No one would have been able to call it because it probably wouldn't be seen on the proofs. Because who knows when he slipped in that on the yellow plate.
yeah,
And so that, if he's the last guy on the line, no one's going to see it until they saw it printed.
yep.
And I don't know
All
if
those
the
Captain
whole
America books.
I don't
have
know if the
Bucky
whole
with the
run-
yellow penis in it.
I don't
The
know if
secret American penis story. This is amazing.
that's the thing. And again, going back to that Spidey story, it was caught. The books were supposed to be returned, and a ton of the books were just sent back to Marvel. But here's the thing: you got all these books just laying there, and they eventually got tossed into the bins. What the book bins are is the books that are free to be given to anyone. People would get their comps. Not everyone wants to keep their comps. They toss them in the bins. That was the perk for the interns who weren't getting the books for free or weren't getting the books. So you would go through the bins and take the books home. So these books that were supposed to be destroyed will come in and get tossed into the bins. And it was kind of a cycle that, they're supposed to be destroyed. So that's why you can find books that are supposed to be destroyed. You can find them because eventually they'll end up in the bins and people will bring them home, find out about it, and look. It's the whole thing with the Mission Impossible books. Same type of thing. The Mission Impossible comic book that coincide with the Mission Impossible movie starring Tom Cruise.
The Rob Liefeld cover.
The Rob Liefeld cover. There was one panel out of the whole book that we were told by Paramount, if this sees print, Tom is going to be unhappy. Tom as in Tom Cruise. There was one panel he did not like the way Eason was drawn in it. So the books were recalled and that book was reprinted with a new panel in it. But there are copies of that book with that one different panel. And again, it was like that was the note that was gotten from Paramount that came into Marvel's. If this book sees print, Tom is going to be unhappy. And so they recalled that book.
Mm-hmm.
I think I made about $40 or $50 when I sold my copy of it.
See, it's funny. It's funny how you can have sort of the same situation in two different fields of work.
Yeah.
Because I sort of ran into my field of work. I don't want to get off track, but I just did this. But I had the whole thing like our director. He was like, "Craig, we'll have to hear about this," and I'm like, "Well, let's go tell him." Oh, no, wait. I'm like, he's going to be unhappy about this. Well, let's go tell him. I'll talk to him. I'll explain. I would have been like, let's call Tom up. Let's call Tom up. Let's do this. See, that's what I'm trying to get. That's my whole point to bring this back around. If I'd been in that situation, my dumb butt probably would have been like, I want to hear it from Tom. I would have said, talk to Tom. Send it to Tom right now. I want to hear this. Does Tom know you're speaking for him?
From what
But
I hear
again,
of Hollywood stories, probably not.
And that's the thing is we were earlier talking about Godzilla. There's an issue of Spider-Man where Godzilla got sneaked in. It was a Toy Story story where the toys came to life, kind of a thing. And Spider-Man is stuck in this situation. I think it was the Ben Reilly Spider-Man, and he's not sure, but he believes he was shrunk. And these toys came to life. Finds out later he wasn't shrunk. These were just giant robots. So in the background, the artist put Godzilla. The problem was they also put Godzilla on the cover. Marvel no longer had the Godzilla license. That was a Dark Horse thing around the time. So Toho got involved, and basically the parts that I remember is that they came to me to want to look at the Godzillas that Marvel published. And the problem is the Godzilla that Marvel published looks nothing like the Godzilla that was drawn in this book, because the Godzilla in the original comics didn't look like Godzilla. He was just a lizard-looking dinosaur that had the spikes on his back, and he was called Godzilla. Not to say that the artist couldn't draw Godzilla. This was the Godzilla that was being drawn at the time. And so Marvel was hoping, oh, well, we've drawn Godzilla before. This should be okay. And it wasn't. So sequentially later on, they had to actually change the look of Godzilla. And if that book ever saw a reprint, it has to be the new artwork, not the Godzilla that's in it. And from what I hear, as the legend goes, they wanted all those issues destroyed. And so the problem is that by the time Toho found out about this Godzilla in the book, that book has already been 2 or 3 months out. So there was no way calling back those books.
Comics should have a built-in self-destruct button. Everybody's comics.
So
Godzilla, the new issue of Savage Dragon he's green with a fin on his head, not his back.
I noticed there's another Savage Dragon on the cover.
That's the original one from back in like '83 or something when he was.
That's what I thought.
That's Paul Dragon.
Okay.
They made him Paul?
Paul.
Yeah.
Okay.
What it is. All right. This is Malcolm Dragon. He's the Savage Dragon's son. Then there's the original Savage Dragon, who the series was about for its first, 225 issues. And the miniseries. But Eric Larson did his first Dragon story, which had nothing to do with all this stuff, in Graphic Monthly or Graphic, I forget the name of it. He just reprinted it recently. And that was when he was like in high school and did a Dragon story. And that's Paul Dragon. And recently in the Savage Dragon, 25 issues ago, in the Savage Dragon comic, all of the multiverses crashed together into one universe. So now there's only one universe, and everybody got memories, everybody else's memories too. So it made everything crazy for a while. Well, then Paul Dragon showed up. He's like, "Hey, I think I'm a version of your father," and everybody's like, "We don't know who you are." So he's just kind of running around now. And this, like, the original Savage Dragon is, I can't remember if he's dead or just gone. I think he's dead.
He's dead.
He's dead.
Mm-hmm.
So the Malcolm took over the story, because this all takes place in real time too. So there've been different generations of villains and heroes in this, and also different generations have lived and died. But this one I'm particularly, sometimes Eric Larson is so weird with his plot lines. There's superhero fighting going on, and Paul Dragon isn't as strong as the Savage Dragon was either. He doesn't have his healing factor. So he already lost a limb and almost died. But there's something in this where Savage Dragon had a healing factor. So if you got a blood transfusion from Savage Dragon, it could heal you, but it could also turn you into a dragon. That it might not. Malcolm Dragon also has a healing factor, but it's not the same as his father's. So if you get some of Malcolm Dragon's blood, it could heal you, but it just might explode you too. So it heals you, and then your head explodes. So they've got this something called Freak Out, which, once again, it's been in the plot line over the years. Freak Out takes superpowers away. It's like a drug they give you, and it makes superpowers go away, depending on if you got them unnaturally. If you're an alien, it doesn't give you superpowers away. But if you're a human who got superpowers, it takes your superpowers away. So what they do sometimes to save certain people is inject them with Malcolm Dragon's blood, and then inject them with Freak Out before their head explodes. Somehow, in this one hospital, when they were trying to do that, that mixed in with their COVID patients, and everybody in the hospitals had made a new strain of COVID that made everybody in the hospital's head explode. But it burnt out because it happened so fast. It couldn't go to other. It killed everyone in the hospital, but then it burnt out because there was nobody to give it. The more virulent a virus is, the easier it passes, the faster it can burn out.
I wish you could see the excitement and the elation you're having of people's heads blowing up.
It's just crazy. It's like, how did he go? I'm reading this thing going, how do you even come up with this? Was like one of the most just the superhero battles in this were one of the most violent issues in a while. And then he's got people's heads exploding for like no reason. I'm like, what is he? Hey, I like it when Eric Larson surprises me. That's why I like the Savage Dragon. After 262 issues, he still cares.
You know what? I can't believe I can segue with exploding heads into something. Can you believe this? That's the joy of comics right there, man. Have you guys read The Boys and the miniseries Herogasm?
Yeah.
Well, you remind me, they have a character on there that blows people's heads up. That's the segue, okay?
She's in the TV show now, too.
Yeah, the TV show. But I think it's tonight. I don't know when the new Boys episodes come up. I've actually almost gotten caught up. I'm
2 behind now.
Tonight is the Herogasm episode. And I'm just wondering how far they're going with it if you've read the miniseries.
People about that.
Did they?
They I know because my sister has decided to stop watching that show. She's like, I can't take it anymore. And she read the warning on that one. She's like, I can't take it. You can watch it.
I almost got into, believe it or not, a Facebook thread argument. All that online fighting stuff with strangers that I've been able to avoid to. Yeah. Madness. They almost had me and stuff, but the show's not perfect, but if you like it, you like it and stuff. Yeah.
Speaking of licensing against name shaming, the stuff with different reboots. Does anyone know why True Believers 101 is titled Bushman #1? I don't think it was. I bought that. I didn't notice it was titled Bushman #1.
It might be an alternate cover.
Yeah, let me walk over to myself.
I'm sitting here. I actually think I knew this because it just recently got asked online somewhere. And somebody answered that already.
It's the facsimile one that's Moon Knight #1. They might have named the other one for the first appearance of Bushman. That's why they put it.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that was the tie-in. I didn't see because the True Believers sometimes renames stuff for whatever the first appearance is.
I think there was a Facebook group I'm part of that got answered. I can't believe I'm blank, but I think you're dead on. It's more about the Bushman from issue 2 or something. I don't know. God almighty.
Here is True Believers. This one is renamed Annihilus. And that's a Fantastic Four issue, but it's the first appearance of Annihilus. So for True Believers, they rename things. This is...
And it's also as part of that thing in publishing that if you put the logo on the cover, the name of the character,
because our lawyers demanded it. This is Fantastic Four 140, but since Annihilus was somehow tied into it, they made it Annihilus. So they did that with the True Believers.
Yeah, am I the only one that misses the days when every villain was supposed to wear green and purple and the good guy was supposed to be red and blue? I kind of miss those days. Yeah,
you could tell all of them apart. Then they started creating super teams, and everybody needed individual colors.
Yeah, and then in the 90s, everybody had matching jackets.
Speaking of, there was an interesting little thing in here from Eric Larson too, where he said, not a lot to report other than the reality they've been running late, and he mentions that he had, for the first time ever, he had a nasty lingering case of artists or writer's block. It's hard to tell where one starts. And he said, but in any case, it's been a long, hard struggle trying to dig myself out from under it. and it hit it at the absolute worst possible time, right when I was launching a second title, Ant. But he's like, I never stopped working, but I draw the same page again and again. And I was like,
Yeah.
I never.
Yeah, he does. That's what he does.
But he really couldn't get out of it this time. I know sometimes artists redraw pages, and I know he's done that a bit, but he was like, he couldn't get out of it.
I'm sorry, my cat licked my toe and I got distracted. What artist are you talking about?
Eric Larson.
Garb Arts, I got you. Okay.
The thing is, there's a giant fight scene in every issue, and it all looks the same. So I don't know why he's complaining about writer's block. It's not like that thing is not Alan Moore writing Swamp Thing in there.
Hey, he come out with a lot of exploding heads in this issue. That just doesn't come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
It comes out of being on Tubi and watching Scanners at 2 a.m. Like, what can I do?
Maybe you should bring back some of the public domain heroes he's been using, like the original Daredevil.
The penultimate. Well, in the back he's got and I was too distracted by the yellow paper to this is one of those where they make it look yellow, and that just distracts me so much sometimes. But it's Mighty Man and Tootsie. That's a public domain character from like ads. Tootsie.
Captain Tootsie?
He's like, I forget what the ad. They're like Canadian ads for something in the 50s.
Well, not to come out of nowhere, but does anybody have like a favorite public domain character like they can name off the top of their head? Mine's like the Black Terror.
The Great Gatsby. Who's in the public domain now?
Well, it
has to be mine.
Eric Larson has used Terror, but he used Daredevil for a very long run. Yeah,
he used Daredevil for
I did some sketch cards, so I was drawing Daredevil for a while. And I have some Daredevil. I have copies of the Daredevil books. I bought a CD. I don't know how. It's again early eBay, so they're just scans of the Daredevil books. So I think it's I forget the format. It's not like a regular format. And so I have like read a little bit of those books. So he's the one that I would say not a favorite, but that's the one that I'm more aware of and have drawn in the past.
I remember I remember seeing Daredevil, that public domain original Daredevil for the first time, and honestly, yeah, if you've seen him, I know we're not going to pop up, but that belt, the spiky belt that he wears,
yes,
I'm serious, man. In my head, the tagline that came to my head was "The man with the hug that kills." You know? I was like,
it's a great line.
I picture some Casanova guy that would suck you in with his sweet words. You know,
I think I first saw him in the Steranko History of Comics. That's where I read about Daredevil. So I read about almost everything for the first time from the Golden Age.
I remember public domain characters being used. You know, I've got the Dan Baerton, Chuck Dixon, Black Terror from I think it was like Eclipse. They had like a 3-issue prestige series and stuff. And then I remember Malibu, after all the Image guys left, they came out with like Man of War and all these guys from the 40s. But public domain characters really seemed to take off when Alan Moore used them in his ABC Comics and Tom Strong, with all that stuff. And then it's like it blew up. The public domain characters blew up. I never saw somebody
blows up everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. It all seems to go to Alan Moore.
People love Coffee and Alan Moore. But the second to last issue, Norse Mythology Volume 3, and this is the first part of the story of Ragnarok. And it's all P. Craig Russell. He's just not doing layouts; he's doing the art too, and of course, it's terrific. All right, it's Craig Russell. If you've never read Craig Russell's anything, you should. Have you guys read any of this Norse mythology stuff? The Craig Russell adapting the Neil Gaiman.
When it shows up online, we're trying to convince a couple of the Portuguese publishers to publish Norse mythology.
It's got Neil Gaiman's name. They should be able to, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, you know what makes a comic sell in Portugal?
What?
Nothing.
No.
You can if you put out some obscure indie character by some obscure indie artist, sells 200 copies. And if you put out something made by Alan Moore, it sells 200 copies.
Wow. Are there any public domain characters from other countries that have become westernized and used?
The Three
Ooh, I don't know.
Musketeers. The
None
Three,
I can think
Musketeers.
of. What was that?
the Three Musketeers,
The
Sherlock
Three
Holmes.
Musketeers, Dracula. The
Uh,
Monster of Frank-
You can, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen has a few of those, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the Sex Roman characters are no, wait, they're not. Sex Roman died in 1959. Fu Manchu is not in the public domain in Europe.
Ah. I'll tell you what's interesting. I mean, and I'm only bringing this up because like it actually is in context and stuff, but I've been binge watching the show Elementary about
Well, that's
you know what okay.
Sherlock
I
Holmes.
find it. Oh, I'm finding it much better when you can binge it for some reason. Excellent show, but at the same time, they had the Cumberbatch Sherlock going on over in the BBC, and there was actually an exchange with the lawyers and stuff of where the BBC was like, "We'll be watching you." Because the shows were concurrently, and I'm just sitting here thinking, "Oh my God!" They're fighting over who Sherlock's going to be. And then of course I did not like the I'm going blank, man. The guy Richie Sherlock with Iron Man.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Why can't I think of his name? What's the actor's
not Morton Downey Jr. The other Downey
Robert
Jr.
Downey Jr.
Yeah.
Robert
So-
Downey Jr.
RDJ.
Okay, so I'm sitting there in Endgame with my wife and her kids and stuff, watching Avengers Endgame, and they've got Bernard Cumberbatch, and if I'm saying his name right, I'm so sleepy right now. And they got Robert Downey Jr. And I'm like, is nobody noticing we got two Sherlocks on the screen? I'm like, I feel like that should have been a thing. And to this day, I'm still disappointed that nobody was like geeking out with me.
I geeked out. I was more disappointed that not one of them said "no shit, Sherlock" at any point. The joke was there.
And now that you have pointed it out, I'm right there with you.
Here's something to notice about Elementary that I noticed watching it the first time through. Is the Lucy Liu plays Watson.
Yeah,
Watson in this, and there are more shots of Lucy Liu all snug in her bed than in any show ever of anyone. Also, she's like Sherlock Holmes is always waking her up, and she's got this big, fluffy down comforter down. She's like all snug in her bed.
Well, binging it, okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead and tell you. First couple seasons, she's kind of dressed conservatively, little tights, little skirts, not a lot of skin. Season 3, getting out of bed left and right, cooking coffee at the counter. They've got back, even the cinematography is different, so we can see her legs here. Skirts got shorter, and I'm sitting here like, where, I was like, you're taking the integrity away from a great show, sir. I'm getting so old, I can't believe it. I need my 12-year-old me where I'm like, yeah, the insatiable women are trying to kill you. I got to get back to that. Guys, I'm going to hop out, guys. I'm getting punch drunk, and I have learned over the years when to bow out. So you guys be cool. Great to see everybody. Good to see you, Paolo. Good to see you, Wilson.
All right.
Take care.
Time. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Now let me show you 3 comics that go together. I somehow have got a superhero universe going that I'm reading from Image. We got Rogue Sun number 5, Radiant Red number 4 of 5, and Radiant Black number 15. And these are all from sort of the Radiant Black universe. And they're all pretty solid comics. I'm enjoying them.
See, but that's how you make a proper superhero universe.
Yeah.
You don't launch. Everybody wants to do. Let's launch a bunch of interconnected titles. Let's start with 4 or 6, so that in 1 year we have 12, and in 2 years we have 20.
Right.
And then everything gets canceled halfway through the plan. No, okay. Let's make a story. Hey, let's spin this off.
And there are 3 different ideas too. The original idea was Radiant Black, who he kind of described it as the Power Rangers meets something I can't remember. All I can remember now is the Power Rangers, because there's different color suits. And one of the interesting things about it is they switched lead characters on. We started out with the lead character who got this magical suit and his sidekick. By issue 5, the lead character almost died, and the sidekick got the suit. And so the sidekick has been the superhero for the last 10 issues, and the lead is like, I haven't won nothing. You go right ahead. I'll help you out.
And in 220 issues time, the lead character comes back as Paul Dragon.
There you go. And there's some sort of overarching story going on, but I don't really know what it is. They really haven't revealed much of it yet. A lot of it is interpersonal stuff. And like he's fighting a lot of, and it's like the modern age where sometimes like the villains have YouTube channels and Radiant Black has a Twitter, and they're all trying to get popular and go viral and make money. And they're like, this issue is all about, there's some older superhero they mentioned, Blaze, I think it was, from the 50s. And people are making a fan movie about who would win in a fight, Radiant Black or Blaze. So this is all about that fan-made movie getting made. And the cool thing is, if you go to the back, there's a back ad. There's one of those scan things where it brings you to a 5-minute animated feature of Radiant Black versus Blaze. So they got a real sort of media tie-in going in here.
That's a good idea.
That's what the main one is about. And then we got Radiant Red, who this is just a 5-issue mini. And Radiant Black and Radiant Red fought early on in the first arc. She was the one who almost accidentally killed Radiant Black. And she's just like a normal teacher. She's not really a villain. But she was so desperate because her degenerate gambler husband got them in such debt that when she was given the suit, she decided to rob some banks. But then she didn't know what to do with the money she robbed, because it's like she doesn't know how to launder money. She just can't all of a sudden pay her bills with money from a bank robbery. Meanwhile, some other robbers sussed out who she was and are using her in a job to and they'll launder the money for her if she does. So there's that stuff going on in that mini. And of course they betray her, no honor among thieves. That's what's going on in this issue. And then Rogue Sun is sort of a straight up superhero. But once again, everybody gets their powers from some super suits. I guess it stops you from having to have an origin because your suit gives you your superpower. And this is just his father had the suit. His father died, passed down to him. He was estranged from his father too. So now he's learning to be a superhero. And what's funny is I think he's a teenager, but Radiant Black are both in their mid-30s. And I keep forgetting that because it looks like the artwork looks like Invincible. So they look like teenagers. And it's like I always kind of forget that they're supposed to be in their mid-30s. But that nice little superhero universe going on over there in Image.
Yeah, I think I want to try that because you've mentioned it quite a few times.
Yeah, well, it's been around for 15 issues now, Radiant Black. So I've been mentioning it a bit.
Yeah, but I haven't been listening to you. I've only just...
Of course, Paulo can't get it because they don't get Image trades over there.
I can if I order them, but if I don't order them, I can't.
Right.
Yeah, because the two comic shops in Lisbon, they don't order everything of everything.
Oh yeah, you can't. No comic shop does, especially trade paperbacks.
But but the line where they choose which things to carry without people ordering them, it's very low.
Yeah.
If it's Image, forget it.
Yeah. Let me show you what I ordered. I made a video of this yesterday. I don't know if you saw it. The Laurie Lovecraft Omnibus.
I saw that artwork somewhere.
Walter Simonson posted a link to this a couple of weeks ago. That's where you may have seen it.
That's where I probably seen it.
On Twitter and it's Mike Vosberg. He's I think what's his name? Pete Ventrella, who I've never heard of, is helping him write it. But I've never heard of this. If you want a good look at it, just go on my I made a video of it yesterday, like 5 minutes looking at it. But it's got some really nice artwork in it. some really good black. I remember Mike Vosberg from the early '80s doing some Marvel stuff, and he was never a favorite of mine. But this stuff is really nice, and it's an indie comic. I guess he did over the decades, and some of it goes back to the '70s and Star Reach. And I just started reading it. It's about an actress, a 30-something-year-old actress who becomes a sorcerer. And there's a lot of Hollywood stuff in the first story, but it is really well drawn. There's some good cheesecake pinups and art, and it is really well drawn. And sort of he can spot blacks really well, and there's just a lot of good graphic design in the drawing too. I must say, I was really I have never been this impressed with Mike Vosberg as I have been with this book. It is really good.
Have you mentioned to the people what spotting black means?
Spotting blacks means figuring out where on the page you want to put objects that are black as compared to whites, especially. And the artists who are really good at it can move your eye around the page just by where they put the blacks on the page. And also can make something look really pretty. Like, look at that drawing of that woman in the dress over there is all because he knows how to spot blacks. He knows exactly which parts of the dress to make solid black. And you do that with the backgrounds, you do that with the foregrounds, you do that with the middle grounds. And some guys are just really, some guys don't. Let's say it almost, being the colorings and inking and changing, it almost doesn't happen anymore. Mm-hmm. But excellent job of it here.
I'm looking at this stuff. It's like Leonard Starr at a one night fling with Steranko and decided to keep the baby but not tell Steranko.
Now that you mention it, Leonard Starr, you're right. Who was that? Who was the artist again?
Vosberg.
Leonard Starr, Kelly Green.
Kelly Green, yeah. For Kelly, yeah, Leonard Starr did Kelly Green with.
Leonard Starr is his name, not the strip, right? Okay. Right. All of a sudden, I was thinking Leonard Starr was the name of the strip. No, Leonard Starr did Kelly Green and lots of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right, especially in the hair techniques and things. So, like I said, some of it goes back to the '80s, so he must have been looking at a lot of Leonard Starr. Mm-hmm. But nice book. I was really impressed by it.
Where'd you get that? Your local comic shop, or did you order that?
I got that off of Mike Vosberg's website. There's a link in the video that I made yesterday.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I think Sleepy Reader and Loading the Cannon all went and got copies after watching my video. They're like, "Oh, that's cool." So that's good. So, but yeah, I was really, like I said, I think, didn't Mike Vosberg draw the She-Hulk graphic novel that John Byrne wrote?
No, John Byrne drew it.
No, John Byrne
drew it.
I
think he worked with John Byrne on some She-Hulk, or maybe he worked on She-Hulk. I can't remember. But I do not remember being as impressed by his art on that as I am on this.
Oh, Vosberg drew the first She-Hulk comic, the one from the late 70s.
Okay, he drew that. All right. Yeah, I was not impressed by any of that She-Hulk comic. So
nobody was. It was just there.
I remember being extremely disappointed with that comic because I bought it off the stands. And it was all hyped up as Stan Lee's coming back to write a comic. And there was that, even at that time, there was the same, we need more comics about strong women push, even back then, as there is now. Because I was like, oh, cool, a comic about a strong woman. I'll read that. Because I wanted that too, even as a kid. I'm okay with reading.
Vosberg was so unimpressive in Savage She-Hulk that they had to get Michael Golden to do the covers, see if anybody picked it up.
Did he draw the first issue?
No, no, that was John Buscema.
Yeah, he was. Like I said, this stuff is terrific. I do not remember ever being impressed by it. This stuff.
Stan Lee and John Buscema did the first issue just so they would have something to be there, and then David Kraft was the writer for the remainder of the run.
Matter of fact, I just saw somebody I can't remember. It was Fabian or someone on Facebook, Fabian Niciza, saying something like, "Oh, I just reread the David Kraft She-Hulk, and now I can see what he was going for with it." I'm like, "Wow, you got more desire to do that than me." Because Jared, did you pick up I Hate This Place too this week? No, I didn't. Matter of fact, once again, I must have decided, at least I think I decided not to order. I remember reading issue 1 and trying to decide if I wanted issue 2 or not. And since it didn't come on my pull list, I must have decided against it. Not because I didn't like issue 1. Sometimes it's just that I've got too many comics. 7 comics a week is about my limit. That's about what my budget will handle. So I go through. So sometimes I miss series just because my pull list is full. Then it empties out, 6 months later, and I have to find new stuff to get. And I'm like, too bad I didn't get that other series. So that's one I think I didn't order. But, or else, sometimes it gets shorted at my shop and it shows up 2 weeks later. And I'm like, oh, I did order this, huh? But that's pretty rare. What else did I get here? The Silver Coin, issue 11.
It's already up to 11?
It's already up to 11. Not bad for a 6-issue miniseries.
Or did he go straight to 11? just because it went, just so they could say, mine goes to 11.
Once again, terrific art by Michael Walsh. Each issue is drawn by Michael Walsh, and each issue has a different writer. We got James Tinney in the 4th on here. And it's really an excuse for Michael Walsh and whatever writer to do horror stories. Because the Silver Coin is just a MacGuffin, if that.
Mm-hmm.
This issue is about because there's this evil silver coin, and it makes people do evil things.
There's a HBO show that's similar, where you're following the 13 coins. I don't know if it was 13, but the coins that were used to
13 pieces of silver.
Yes. So it's basically a Spanish show, and it's basically those coins are being searched for because and the weirdness that happens on it. But it's a slow paced horror film that's is a series, so you have to go back to it. And it's like, I guess I got spoiled with binge watching everything, that when you went back to weekly, it's like, I kind of forgot the show was going on.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, when I think about it, okay, I could watch 4 or 5 episodes back to back. But the coins are an important thing in the show, because it ends up that the people that are looking for it, you're not sure if it's a secret society or this or that, but it is connected to the Vatican.
Flaky readers here, evil comic books make me do evil things. But what's weird about this one is, since every issue is a different writer, how much the coin is involved is really up to that issue's writer.
Mm-hmm.
Like this issue is is about a diner, and across the street from a diner, like a McDonald's opens up, and now the diner's not doing good business because they're competing with a fast food place across this. Even though they got the M upside down and named it something else, but it's a McDonald's. Mm-hmm. So she goes, I wish tomorrow people showed up, a whole bunch of people showed up and were hungry. And the guy with the silver coin happened to be in the diner and gives it to her in change. So the next day, evil things happen in the diner. So it's like not even, it's just kind of like, oh, the coin's there. Evil stuff is going to happen. And evil stuff happens. But like I said, Michael Walsh is such a good artist / storyteller that it's just fun. The stories aren't, some stories are better than others, but he's the draw. He's good every issue. He finds something new to do.
And is each issue its own story with a different
Each
writer,
issue
or
is
is
its
there,
own
is there
story.
like a couple of issues?
There's no overall arc. I want to learn about what the silver coin can do, but there's no rule. Yeah, there's no rules. The rules are. I'm okay with that, but you have to be okay. Like when I first bought this, it was originally supposed to be a 6-issue mini. Then he's like, I'm going to keep it going. I guess sales were good enough. And when I first bought it, like for the first one or even two, I like read the first issue, liked it. Got the second issue, liked it, but was a little disappointed because I didn't understand it had nothing to do with issue 1. I bought issue 3 and I was like, all right, I just have to accept the fact that each issue had really nothing to do with the other. And once I accepted that fact, I enjoyed it a lot more. Yeah. Sleepy agrees about Walsh. He really is. I've never read his. I know I've read some of his stuff here or there, but this is the most I've read his work, and he's just a really good storyteller. The silver coin can barely get you a gallon of gas now. I bet the silver coin made the gas prices go up. That's what happened. Somebody used the silver coin at a gas pump, and it sent worldwide gas prices up. There's your horror story. I don't know how Michael Walsh is going to draw it, but. Oh yeah, silver like 11 issues. That's a pretty good run with like I said, a different writer every issue. So that's something that I haven't really seen before. Same artist, different writer.
Yeah, I've never seen that. I don't think I've seen that before. It's a good idea.
Yeah, especially it's a good horror book. It's a good. One other thing I haven't showed that I got this week. I got the Carmen hardcover. Slightly bigger than a regular comic.
Mm-hmm.
I have the issues and liked them. I was on the fence over whether I wanted to double dip and get the hardcover collected edition because I wanted to see the art a little bigger.
I like the spot gloss on that too.
Yeah, nice spot gloss on that. Woo! What sold it for me is what sells a lot of collected editions is the price dropped down to $16 on it from $26. So I was like, all right, at $16, I'll buy it. It cost less than I paid for the series.
What extras does it give you if it's different than the comic book?
This was one that was very popular amongst us YouTubers last year when it came out, I think.
Okay.
It came out in individual issues from Image, but where was it printed first, Paulo?
Spain?
Spain?
Yeah.
So it came out the year before that. It's by Guillaume March.
Guillaume
March. Known from his Batwomen Gotham covers. And I think he actually drew some insides time. Guillaume March. I'll have to say that a few more times before I get his name right. Guillaume. I always want to put an extra syllable in that, like it's got an accent over the I, but it doesn't.
Guillaume March.
Guillaume March. Terrific stuff. Wonderful drawing, good storytelling. I don't even really want to read the story again. I just want to look at it.
Mm.
Not that the story was bad or anything.
But no, sometimes when the book has really good art, you just want to stare at it. I did that a lot with, as the artist we mentioned before, Jeff Darrow, when he did Rusty and Big Boy. I used to love that stuff, just looking at all the things that he did in there because, again, each one panel has more art than some people does in a whole book. And the amount of detail he, especially in a book like that, I mean, all his books are like that. But when he did the giant monster type books, he made everything big. And the Rusty books, I think those were oversized, the first set of them.
Does it have a double page spread at the end? Single issues don't. It's got a sideways page. Was this meant to be a double page spread? That's weird. And then it ends with more of the sea stuff. Yeah, that's the end, the sea. Then we get some behind the scenes stuff, and we get the covers. So I don't think it's got the double page spread. It looks like they put it sideways if that was supposed to be the spread. Yeah, that was the double page in Europe. Okay. Before Jared, I never noticed spot gloss. This week I noticed it in several places, including the new Captain Action reprint. Because I was doing the spot gloss on the Bad Idea comics. So every time I'd do one of my weekly comics, and I'd get Bad Idea comics, the first thing I'd do is make sure the spot gloss came out. On camera, I'd be like, here's the latest Bad Idea. Oh, let me check the spot gloss. So everyone started noticing spot gloss. Yeah, the Delta Wing double page spread. Yep, that was it. Your friend Chris hasn't been around lately. Does Lobster Comic Coloring finally do him in? I think he finished. So he's not home Friday nights coloring anymore.
I saw because Smitty had posted the cover. So the book was announced. I just saw that before we came online.
We've been cheated in the States of a double page spread. I wonder why that is. There's plenty of pages in here. Does it? I mean, even if it came in the wrong place, like clearly something is wrong with the page count where the double page spread, a double page spread is never supposed to start, of course, on this side because it can't. It's got to start on this side.
Right.
So obviously there was something wrong with the page count with the double page spread started on this side, but they could have put another page in there. I mean, you would think the artist would want to have his double page. You would think March would just say, okay, let me draw one more page in there. So the double page spread it could have just been a page of a blue sky and a bird. You know, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, you could take one panel and blow that up just to make it.
Yeah. Yes, I think there's a page swap. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just weird that they do that, especially with all these extra pages back here. There was no reason to do that. You could have. That's weird. Because that just can't be the right storytelling solution. I can't imagine March thought that was the right storytelling solution to that. It just makes no sense. I think Gore got the Spanish version and noticed it first. Ah, okay. That is weird. Well, like I said, I'm just looking forward to just flipping through this.
Double page spreads are rare in European comics in comparison to US comics. The main reason is because the pages are usually larger. So drawing all the detail in a double page spread would take an immense amount of time.
They got long deadlines over there anyway.
Not quite. The thing they operate like book publishers. So the editor is ringing, hey, we need this. The contract says you got to have this done by in 1 month, and you still have 22 pages to go.
Mm-hmm. And let's see, another comic I got this week: Usagi Yojimbo, Lone Goat and Kid, number 2. I'm number 2. Number 6. This is actually the only Lone Goat and Kid issue in these 6 issues. Because, like I said, Usagi didn't tell a lot of long stories. I guess they just wanted to name this. And I, of course, didn't. This is the reprint, so I haven't read it since it came out many, many years ago, decades. So it was interesting reading it. I had forgotten that the setup was somebody wanted Lone Goat and Kid assassinated. But he had already killed a bunch of samurai in their clan. So what they wanted to try and do was get Usagi, who's a really good swordsman, to kill him if he could. So they hired through a cutout Lone Goat and Kid to kill Usagi. That was the way they were going to get them into a fight. and they of course got them into a fight, which then neither of them were eventually going to get. Then some more bad guys kind of gave away their position. There's Usagi fighting the lone goat kid. But what I found was interesting is they basically took Usagi out of the climax. I guess just to show you how badass lone goat is and kid. So they had like lone goat and kid against these 40 samurai in this clan who was fighting him without Usagi's help. So I found that interesting. It was like he wanted to do such a tribute to Lone Wolf and Cub that he didn't even want Usagi helping him at the climax. He wanted Lone Goat and Kid kind of on their own against all these samurai. I thought that was interesting. An interesting choice, which I didn't remember. Lone Goat at last. I assume it was just one issue nod to Lone Wolf and Cub. Yeah. I think he just wanted to have him as a character in here. And he did an excellent job with it. The story was, as Stan Sakai always does an excellent job. As I say, every 2 weeks or so here. With the two different comics. Like I said, but I thought that was an interesting creative choice to remove Usagi from the climax. Saul says some double-page spreads are not done well, in his opinion. Having 2 pages doesn't seem to engender detail work, like was true years ago. You know who did the worst double-page spreads that I could never figure out? The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead had, and I'm told the double-page spreads were not the artist, what's his name, Adlard. They were, what's his name, the writer. So I can't remember. He's really famous. All of a sudden, I can't remember his name. Hickman's name is blocking it. But the double-page spreads were all chosen by the writer, and sometimes they were just. I would get to I bought all of Walking Dead. Always enjoyed it. Robert Kirkman. There we go. But sometimes I'd get to a double-page spread and go, what? Why did he choose that as the double-page spread? Often the double-page spreads were a big head talking. Kirkman. Yeah, there we go. There's the name I could not remember. Robert Kirkman. But it was just crazy that, like I said, I forget who I was talking about it with, who told me that it may have been Chris or Greg Schiegel or somebody who actually knows a bunch of people at Image and maybe knows Kirkman, said Kirkman they were in the script, the double-page spread. But I was like, he always picked something that had very little visual impact for the double-page spread. And I was always like, there's no way the artist is picking this as a double-page spread. Because a double-page spread is supposed to have the most visual impact. And he would pick a face talking at us. We are the Walking Dead. I think that was the one in like issue 25 or something. It was one of the first times they did it. And it was just like a big double-page spread of Rick's head saying, we are the Walking Dead, or something like that. I always found that strange. Yeah, I think double-page spreads just depend on how good the artist is.
Yeah, the story calls for it, and it's one of those things where what's weird is looking at the technology of stuff, where a double-page spread looks wonderful in a comic book, but it doesn't look all that good on the cell phone.
Yeah, digital. The problem with digital double-page spreads is it has the opposite effect of it's intended to. Mm-hmm. On a comic book, it's big and boom. On an iPad, it shrinks it down so it can fit it on. So it does the exact opposite effect.
Yep.
Yeah. Kirby, of course, was the master of the double-page spread. I wonder if that just reminds me. I wonder if, with all the full script that's been used now, I'm wondering if Saul is not reacting to some of the double-page spreads because they're picked by the writer. So the writer might not pick It's either something the artist likes to make a double page spread out of, or something that might not have as much visual impact, because I mean, it could be anything, but that could be part of it too. All of a sudden, the artist goes, "I'm supposed to make that a double page spread?" Okay.
You know, I think that also falls from the fact that there are no courses, or there hasn't been courses until more recently, about the art of comic books. So people will look at a comic book and believe that's the size they draw it. It's a
Right.
comic book size. That one artist does all the artwork, or one artist does everything. And so when someone's training to do things themselves, a writer who might only be learning how to write from comic books might be reading, oh, I guess the double page spread must go about here. Now, again, I'm just taking these are broad brushes.
Well, I
There are
think
people that does.
I think that's the case inside Marvel, though.
Mhm.
In terms of, we know that all new editors used to go through Mark Grunwald's training program.
Right.
And I think they kept that up for a couple of years after, but then it petered out. So new editors stopped being trained in comics. And like,
Well, I think new editors stopped being trained the moment Gemma showed up and started hiring all the people that.
Then there's that, and I don't,
don't read comics. Yeah,
the last 15 years, I don't know if editors at Marvel have gotten it. I know DC has some programs for new artists that they've run on and off. So I know they're at least giving some artists training on occasion. But like I said, I don't. I think I think some storytelling problems happen within the companies too. Here's something I don't know if Wilson was here when I discussed this. I think last year I discovered something about some Marvel comics that I'd never noticed before. What does Saul say here? Even a single full page can be wasteful considering the price of books. I hate having lots of space wasted for a little story payoff. I hate when they make logos double page spreads. Yeah. But anyway, here's something I just happened to be looking through some current Marvel comics. And I was saying to myself, there's something about these. I don't like the storytelling. And I'm like, what? I feel a weird. I'm not getting the story. And I've said, well, maybe these artists just aren't that good at storytelling, but they're good artists. And I'm like, that can't be that, because I don't even know their names, because I don't know anyone. But they were solid, illustrative artists who could move your eye around the panels. There's nothing, but reading the story, there was a disconnect to it. So I eventually said to myself, I came to this sort of weird realization that artists have been so devalued, especially at Marvel and DC. It's not true of the indie books I buy. The indie books I buy, I think one of the reasons the indie books I buy are better is because often the writers and artists know each other and know each other. A writer's not going to pick a bad artist. At Marvel and DC, you get assigned an artist. And I said, I wonder, I'm like, artists are so devalued. I wonder if anyone at Marvel or DC is really paying attention to what they're doing. Storytelling. I'm like, probably not. I'm like, knowing how devalued artists are, there's probably little oversight besides them turning in pages that look pretty. So what I did was, instead of reading the comic, I just looked at the pictures. And sure enough, there's a different story, and some stuff, not all stuff, maybe like half. I pulled about 10 digital Marvel comics down out of the air. And about half of them, there was a distinctly different story going on in the artwork than there was in the script. It was like the artist was kind of doing their own thing, and it didn't necessarily, and that's kind of where the disconnect was for me. Because because it's like the artist was working. What the artist was doing was telling the story his way, making the page. He was making the pages look good that would go to the editor, because all the editor is going to be doing is, when he gets the artwork in, is looking at it. He's not going to be reading it. That's a whole different. So he made the artists were making the page good to look at, and you could easily follow the story. But when the script was overlaid on it, it was actually a different story. There was a disconnect between the script and what the art was showing. Not a ton. It's not like he was doing a completely different story. But it was just, if you just look at the art, I was like, wow, this is sort of a fast-paced, fast-moving story that's going on here. When I read the text, it's just kind of like there's stuff going on in the text that's describing stuff, and it was just weird coming to. I'm like, I think the artists are so devalued that a lot of them, the editors and maybe even the writers, aren't really paying that close attention to what they're doing, and they're sort of doing their own thing. So try getting some like Marvel or DC books from artists you haven't seen before, and just look at them and just see if you can detect that. I haven't done that. I did that last year. I haven't done it this year, but it was weird to be able to. Because I was like, I'm like, seriously, there's a different story going on in this art. Slightly different, not radically different.
Right.
But I think that was the disconnect I was getting.
And I could definitely agree with you on the whole concept of devaluing artists, because they don't want another image.
They said that out loud.
And they said it out loud. There are no more superstar artists.
We will never make a superstar artist again. I forget who said it. It was either Bob Harris or Tom DeFalco. I can't. Some bigwig said it at Marvel to us. I mean,
they're not.
That was policy.
And then there was an article on Facebook a couple of years ago where they said out and out with something like that there are no current superstar artists.
Right.
And it's like,
we don't want them.
Yep.
Yeah. Probably Terry Stewart said it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think current Marvel has editorial standards that they communicate to the artists. I think you're right there, because I don't think they know what they are. I'm okay with double page, but really dislike most extras in hardcovers. Yeah, they're rarely interesting. I like the covers, but a few really interesting extras, they're mostly just there to make 8 pages. Yeah, they're there to fill out the book. They're okay. You glance at them at the end. Padding, yeah. As a possible, artists are working on books before the writing is finalized. Not when they're doing full script writing, which is mostly what they do these days. In the olden days, when in the Marvel method, where plot got done first, they do the writing to the art. Clearly, in the days of How to Draw Marvel Way, there was a whole set of expectations in how the art functions. I think that was lost. That was lost when Mark Grunwald died and Ike Perlmutter took over.
Is there even an art director nowadays?
I don't think so. There wasn't an art director after Michael Golden. Well, Darren Auk was art director for a little while. But yeah, after that, and they barely paid attention to them. It's not like they had final say over the art. The editors still did, but they'd pay attention to them. But like I said, it was Mark Grunwald who taught all the new editors about Marvel Comics, and he died in '96. And I know other people tried to use his material and keep that up, but then everybody was fired. Nobody cared anymore. And then what's his name, who Wilson just mentioned,
Bill
hired
Jameson.
editors with no comic experience. That was what he thought was a strength. Oh yeah, DC had oh God, his name just flew right out of my head. He was really good. The Batman black and white editor, Chiarello, Mark Chiarello. Mm-hmm. He was DC's longtime art director, and he was a really good artist, really good art director. I think he had actual power over there. They'd even let him edit some things, like the Batman black and white was his idea. DC really lost something when they got rid of him. what does an art director do at a normal place? The art director is supposed to be in charge of everything visual that comes out of a book publisher, an ad agency, whatever. They're in charge of the final way something looks. But even when John Romita was art director at Marvel, he wasn't in charge of how everything looks. He was no, he
well,
wasn't.
no,
I was there.
no.
The editors had final say. Some of them really liked to use them. Some of them ignored them.
In the 1970s, although the thing about the job of art director in the 1970s entailed doing cover corrections to make sure that the characters
Stan
resembled
was
the model.
de facto art director there, even though, because that was all Stan. From what I've read, Stan Lee was the de facto art director. He was the one who wanted all the changes. So yeah, that's it. Mark Chiarello. Is that the name I said? Yeah, I don't even remember. He's the one who painted me in Batman Houdini getting beat up by Batman. That was my one comic book appearance. I modeled for him once in the early 90s, right before he was art director. I haven't seen him since then. All those years he was art director at DC. But yeah, he really knows what he's doing. And when they fired him, I was like, oh, they don't know what they're doing.
I appear in a Portuguese comic book. And because the comic book was created by my comic shop owner. So,
I did not nude model for him. I had to wear a hat.
My name was used as a foil, not a villain, but a foil for a character in the Fantastic Four Unlimited book. The scientist that opened a portal to the negative zone, not knowing it was already discovered, to eventually get hunted down and killed by, I think it's Blast Star.
So my name was Living Bomb Burst. I always loved that name. I should say the tagline: the Living Bomb Burst.
Living Bomb Burst. So that was, yeah.
I think you had to be like a World War II veteran to come up with that name.
Yeah.
So which Jack Kirby was?
Yeah,
exactly.
I
don't know if Stan Lee or Jack Kirby came up with it, but that's just such a World War II veteran name, Bomb Burst. The Living Bomb Burst. Let me show you the last comic I got before we sign off in a few minutes, which is Arrow Smith Behind Enemy Lines, issue number 6.
That book's getting really good, isn't it?
A good book. Enjoyed it thoroughly. This is the last issue. The next series is going to be Arrow Smith Beyond Borders, but it ended well, even though it's really a to be continued. But they gave us a lot of info in this one. I enjoyed it thoroughly. The bad news is, as he says in the back, it's going to be a while for the next issue because Carlos Pacheco was having health problems. Something with a leg being paralyzed that it took them many months to figure out it was a spine problem where a nerve in his spine was being pinched. So that's the good news. They figured it out and he's going to be okay. The bad news was it's going to take him 8 to 12 months of rehab. For much of that time, he won't be sitting at a drawing board and making comics. So that's why I stand at a drawing board. So it'll probably be another year at least before we hear tell of the next Arrow Smith.
Well,
that one was a good
one. And there he goes again.
And he's gone.
Well, Kurt will probably. Well, I don't think Kurt will write anything until he's sure that Pacheco can start drawing it. But yeah, 1 year before he actually starts putting anything to pencils, and we're talking, and not even layouts. It's sketch until it starts doing sketches.
And once again, I move the cursor over to the comments, and it kicks me out. I don't know what that is. There's a guy with last time in some 80 or so appearances in comics. He would just go to artists and conventions and ask them. Oh, okay. So he would model for all the artists in comics. Ah,
Mhm.
okay. He's in 80 comics. That's interesting. Well, the artists are meant to be disposable. What about writers? Yeah, writers are all the big names. That's for some reason. You know what I think it is? Paolo, take over.
I did.
Yeah, I think it's just writers are more corporate.
Yeah.
They're just sort of, that's their personalities. They're not
But
artists in the same way.
since the publishers don't market them, as soon as they get to a point where they're too expensive,
Yeah.
bring in the new ones.
Yep. All right. Well, we should say good evening, say goodbye to everyone, and let Paolo get to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Let Wilson. Or how late do you work, Wilson?
It depends, but I try to stop everything at about 11.
Okay. Are
So
you a
I can
nighttime
relax.
worker or a morning?
I'm a little of both. I've been trying to transition to morning so I
Okay.
could get everything just done.
Yeah, me too.
And then by the time dinner time comes over, I want to just stop at that point
Good idea.
and not be, or when I'm in front of my computer, it's just doing my own stuff. Like for tonight, I'm actually working on lettering just because, I could do that while we're talking, type of a thing. But
Writers
I'll probably finish this one story and then that's it.
writers seem like hustlers these days, self-promoters. That's also because they have the time to do it. Art takes so much longer than writing that artists have a hard time hustling. They have to draw. It's tough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night. We'll talk
All right.
some more next week.
Take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right.
Have a
Bye.
good
Good
one.
night, everybody.
Good night.